Let me get the phone. Okay, it's 5:30 PM, so welcome to the special city commission meeting for Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the first item on the agenda is the special city commission meeting, which is reference to the joint maintenance facility for water, wastewater, street, fleet, forestry, and parks. And the presenter is Rob Ott, the Director of Public Works. Good to see you tonight.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, Rob Ott, Director of Public Works. Also here this evening, we have Patrick Schwab from BBN, and then we've got a couple of folks from Macau, Crown and Gordon, Barry Schmidt, Ben Flowers, and Tucker Picord, and they're also from Macau, Gordon. This evening, these are some of the primary items that we'll be covering in a short presentation. As some of you are aware, this project started back in March of 2016. That isn't a typo, so we've been at it for almost 5 years. With a solicitation for a team for the initial feasibility study. The BBN started the study, and throughout that process, analyzed and performed on existing facilities of 3 different divisions. 2 of the divisions were Public Works with our street, stormwater, and fleet, as well as our utility folks, and then 1 division in parks down on El Paso for consideration. After alternative site selection was considered for a handful of locations throughout the community, locations, our directive from you all back then was not to put out any existing businesses or homeowners. Don't remove property that currently is paying property tax or a property that's generating sales tax. City Commission authorized and completed the purchase of the real estate of properties south of US 24 near the wastewater treatment plant, and the City Commission authorized, so that was back in 2018, 2019. City Commission then authorized the selection of a contractor, the work of our architect, in March of 2020. Then through, someone thought we should have a pandemic, started in 2020, kind of slowed down a little bit of the design process, but we brought forth to you all schematic designs to the commission back in December of 2020. And this chart here kind of highlights what was recommended from the feasibility study to what our schematic design was. There was a number of reductions that were made between what was recommended in the feasibility study versus that schematic design you saw back in December. Office space was reduced to current staffing levels. That means there's no room for growth. It's basically going to accommodate our existing staff. There's probably 1 or 2 cubicles, now allowing just minimum growth in each division. In the future, we're saying 15 to 20 years, it may be necessary to add, depending on how much the community grows, perhaps if we annex to the east, all those sorts of decisions that could come in the future. We reduced the finished floor elevation of the main building to reduce the amount of fill required for the project. The main building meets floodplain regulations and subdivision regulations, and we zoned, annexed this, and we've gone through the code department for our building permits since this is inside the city. We eliminated widening of Levee Drive throughout the project site, reduced the budget for improvements to the entrance, the exit of the facility for larger vehicles, eliminated the loading dock, altered the design of the salt dome from a wooden structure to concrete structure and canvas materials. So we selected some products that were cheaper and readily available here locally. Changed the design of the implement covered storage, as well as some material storage from higher price T-shaped structures to using concrete bunker blocks and basically canvas materials. Again, some of the similar covers you'll see up at the headquarters fire station over our existing salt dome. Eliminated all minor architectural features at the entrance. The facade of the building is now uniform with the type of construction. We eliminated the canopy structure over the fuel island. We reduced paving surface. Majority of the site is now asphalt millings and not concrete. This slide here is the overview. I mentioned before, there's 3 different divisions heading out there: the utility folks, street and fleet, as well as the park staff. We've done a lot of value engineering to get to this point. And we're to the point where, as I kind of explained back in December, next is program cuts. And we don't really want to get into program cuts, otherwise why are we doing this project? Even from December to what McCall Gordon bid on June 16th, we also did some more value engineering. We removed some precast abuse walls inside the building. So now the steel structure comes all the way down to the ground. We're going to install bollards in high traffic areas for wall protection. We downgraded the steel on all the garage doors, removed interior liner in the welding area. We removed drywall in the mezzanine area. We changed the HVAC system to have less zones, again, trying to save money. We also, let's see here, reduced the size of the backup generator, and we reduced the size of the salt dome. So, number of reductions between December and that June bid that just happened last week. McCall Gordon are 35 different components or 35 different trades for the entire project. They received 112 bids. So to give you an example, drywall contractors, we probably got like 4 or 5. Some trades, we got up to 8 bids. There was a couple where we only got 1, like our fuel system. Actually, I think our fuel system was 3. But I know there was like 1 item, we're so specialized, we just didn't get that many bids. But across 35 different components of the joint maintenance facility, their team evaluated 112 different bids. So I think you have a good representation of what it's going to cost to build this facility. Guaranteed maximum
Rob,
price.
I want to
Go ahead,
ask
Commissioner
about the
Morris.
salt dome. There's currently one at the fire station, at headquarters fire station. The word is that eventually that will need to go away because we have to give the land back to K-State. How long will we get to stay there?
So if we have to get rid of the salt dome at the fire station,
Yeah.
we would have to, and we left room to expand this basically to the east. So
Okay.
there's room to expand this to the east.
Okay.
We basically pushed it as far west as we could so that we still maintain good drive aisles. And then that way, the expansion of adding more volume could occur to the east.
Mm-hmm.
If we do lose the headquarters fire station, Salt Dome, we will need to expand this.
Yeah,
Okay. Originally, we had sized it to take care of the entire city
exactly.
because we knew that was on the table. The timing of that, I can't speak to that. I know it came up during some of the goal setting, and it's speculative, I think, at this point. But did I answer your
Yeah,
question?
thank you. It's not urgent, and so we'll be able to get this built before that emerges as an issue. Okay, thanks.
Yep. No, thank you, Commissioner. Okay, guaranteed maximum price. That's the contract that we're asking you all to consider tonight. So through all their bids, insurance, bonds, work that they need to do, total construction cost is 18.6 million. We also have FF&E, so that's all the office furniture, storage cabinets for parts and materials, the meeting rooms, the training room, for that number of people there. The safety specialist is actually going to be stationed out there as well. Safety specialist is going to come from City Hall and go out there. And that training room is not only, it'll provide a facility for him, but also just because of the sheer number of crews and the amount of certifications that we need to keep up and monthly training every 2 weeks and so forth to stay on topics. This is not a hard bid. Many of you know how much plywood, resins, anything made out of glue is right now. It's pretty pricey. So we haven't locked that number in, but we took the price of some quotes, and we gave allocations for these various different spaces in terms of chairs and tables and things of that nature. We'll be working with BBN to finalize, because you really don't want an engineer picking out colors. We'll go through that process. We'll most likely order those components 6 months from now if you approve the contract tonight. And that'll allow us to hopefully see prices come down on those items and so forth. The other item that's up there is the owner's contingency. So the owner's contingency is about 6% of the project cost. This allocation is for possible future price escalation, unforeseen site issues, additional design fees if necessary to resolve if we need to use alternatives because of shortage of supplies or unavailability of supplies at the time. And then, there's typically an owner's contingency that's built in, but it's just not normally that large a percent. So again, that's just some added protection. That doesn't mean that we want to dip into that, but it's there so that we have some breathing room to deal with issues in the market. Overall contract that we're asking to consider tonight is roughly $20.2 million. This is a breakdown of the overall master budget. So ever since we started in 2016, all the way back to when we did the initial feasibility study, the site alternative studies where we looked at the Amherst site, we looked at, there was another site off of Fort Riley Boulevard in Yuma. We didn't go into a lot of detail with that one, but we analyzed that one as well. We also did a phase 1 environmental of the site that we did select, and there was also appraisals of a number of different sites. So that's the $82,000. We have the purchase of the site. We have an existing BBN contract. We're roughly about 3/4 of the way through that contract through the design phase. There are dollars still in that contract, but that is for construction services. So we have dollars in there for Patrick and his team to assist us in shop submittals, review of the structural components of the building, review of materials that are going to be used on the project, as well as pay estimates, helping us with pay estimates and verifying that everything was installed. There is a design amendment with BBN, this $143,600 that we're asking tonight. That's for those changes that we made with the mezzanine, as well as we took out the overhead crane in the mechanics shop, because the mechanics kind of, what's more important, having the overhead crane versus having the exhaust system. They chose the exhaust system. It also reduced some of the cost to the steel building because the structure would have to have been stronger for that crane. So there's less steel, less strength, and that helped out in some of those costs as well. So that's what the $143,600 is for. There will be an amendment. This has to do with the FF&E, the $49,000 to help us with the design. There's a couple of different ways we can structure that. That could be an hourly not to exceed. We could take on more of it in-house. Again, I don't know if I'm the best person or our team's the best person for picking out furniture and layout of offices, but I would like some help. There is also that we'll have to ask Ron to approve McCall Gordon solicited bids. So this is third-party testing. We will do testing in terms of soil compaction, concrete testing outside of the footprint of the building. What code or risk reduction is going to ask for is far more intense inside the envelope of the building in terms of compaction testing. I don't have anyone that can test welds and so on and so forth in order to satisfy the building permit. So that's what that $25,000 is for. Some equipment that our IT division will install, as well as we have to do a water quality component. So we pulled that out from BBN and their team at SMH, and we're going to look at a future contract with Wood and SMH and K-State to design the water quality component. And then this is just an allocation of what we think that construction will cost. Total right now is roughly, you can round up to $22.5 million overall for the project that we're asking you to consider. This is, go ahead, sir.
Go back a slide.
Absolutely.
Okay, so explain to me what you mean by, what are we gonna, stormwater quality, what is that to make sure the water that runs off is not dirty, or what are we thinking?
So for all developments in Manhattan, we're treating ourselves like a developer. There's typically a detention or quantity component, which we don't want to do at the bottom of the watershed. We want to get this water out. So there's no quantity component we're doing. What this has to do is we're disturbing farm ground, and there's a calculation that you do through our regulations in terms of pollutants that would be introduced into the water stream. So what we would do is we would construct, just like the middle schools had to do, the gymnasiums, they have a water quality component at Eisenhower and Anthony. We're doing the same thing here. It's a filtration of that runoff before it goes into the natural stream.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I wasn't around for those decisions on the Eisenhower and anything, so I didn't know that. Thank you.
Yeah, again, we're trying to treat ourselves as if we were a developer. We're just trying to follow our own rules. Okay. Financial funding sources, percentages roughly stay the same. As I mentioned before, you have all three utilities, folks that'll be out there. You have water and wastewater, so that's our water distribution, our water meter readers, our 811 folks, our utility locators, our stormwater crew. We have parks folks that are heading out there. We have obviously street, now that's special street and highway funds. Remember, that's what also funds and fixes our roads, so that's why that percentage is kind of low. And then we have the bond and interest fund. Annual payment based off the 24/5 is roughly 1.7 million a year. What is not calculated in this sheet right here, this 22/4, is the sale of 3 properties. The sale of the street, the fleet, and the water and wastewater. We have appraisals from 2016 that have those 3 properties valued at 1.6. The last time we had a conversation with you all, you said do an RFP, kind of sell it to the highest bidder. You don't want to get into, the direction was we're not going to get into what is it they're doing. Let's just get the highest value. If they want to change the land use, if they want to change the zoning, let the buyer do that. If that's still the same direction, I haven't issued an RFP, but that was kind of the direction from you all last time. So if we still want to go in that direction, that's fine. Or if you give me different direction tonight, that's okay as well. I would recommend that we probably get some updated appraisals. Again, that's 2016. Those values may have gone up, may have gone down. One of them is over by, I'm going to goof this up, I'm going to say the East Side Shopping. It's on the west side of Sethchild, south of Anderson. I forget the name of the, thank you, Plaza West. So there's been some plans revealed recently over at 3131 Anderson. Perhaps that's gone up more than what that appraisal was in 2016. I don't know. I know Commissioner, go ahead, Commissioner House.
We're not planning on selling the El Paso though, right?
That is correct. The 4th property, limited access, it's a tough site. Park and Rec wants to keep it, so they can stage equipment that they can just drive from that site, whether it's during snow and ice operations, or if it's mowing and maintenance of Central Park. Okay, so that's based off those 3 properties there. So that 1.6 million would deduct from the 22.5. So you're really, and again, our intent would be to get these sold such that it would be in time prior to us bonding the project. So that, in theory, the 1.6 million, it could be used to buy down the temporary notes before we go to final bonding for the overall project. Okay? Timeline, again, obviously, we're looking for approval of 3 different items tonight. I think the memo had July, August in it for a start date. I propose, an August RFP, unless you guys give me really complicated instructions tonight on the RFP. I'd like to get that out there. That way, if we don't get a lot of interest, we know early on. And then what do we need to do marketing-wise? So I'd rather get that out early. If you disagree with that, that's okay. I just need to hear that. But the intent would be to get that out early and bring that back to you all for consideration. Completion is currently targeted for January of 2023. A lot of that has to do with the availability and the construction of the steel for the main building, as well as some of the out structures as well, and then move the crews in the winter of 2023. We're asking you all to consider three things tonight. Approve the design of contract amendment with BBN, award the GMP. We need to finalize the documents. Attorneys are still kind of going through all the fine details. So we're asking permission to finalize GMP with McConnell Gordon and then approve the bond resolution. So with that, Commissioner, I covered 5 years of work very quickly. What are your questions? And I do appreciate a number of you, and I'll say this publicly, I do appreciate a number of you have gone out, visited the site, done your homework. The crews really appreciate your interest. Again, I appreciate you all taking a look at it seriously. So, Mayor, with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, I think the resolution here doesn't include, if we pass this, the question you posed on the RFP. Because it doesn't have us really voting to say yes, no on that.
No,
Yes, you want some feedback, so I just.
I'll take
I
feedback.
wanted to start off to say, I think what you said is spot on. What we need to do is sell it to the highest bidder, and then they can take it from there on what they want to do.
If they want to change the zoning, let them
That's
propose it and so forth.
Good.
You're correct, Mayor. We're asking you just for three things tonight. If you want to give me feedback on the RFP, there's still time
I
for me
think
to
the
change it.
commission should do that so that, Rob knows which way to go, because the sooner we get that out, the better also.
Okay.
I have several
Go ahead.
comments, questions. I would like to make sure that the money we receive from the sale of the 3 properties goes directly to offset this project and doesn't wander off into some other direction. I don't know how to do that, but I think that's what we ought to be doing. I can accept the fact that it's being built to today's needs, and if it's 15 or 20 years until we would have to expand it, that's reasonable. I'm willing to live with that kind of and the widening of the levee drive. I think it's the site vision out there is sufficient, that if you had a pullover on the north side and one on, down toward your facility, that'd be enough until there's a way. On the other hand, you're in the street business.
Yes.
So you have concrete left over sometimes. So I think you could solve it yourself on down the road as time goes on. I think a loading dock is important. I don't know, you are in an industrial, this is gonna be an industrial setting, and I don't know, but I value that loading dock. Let's see.
I will tell you that we did talk it over with the crews, and we really talked it in detail.
Yeah.
We do have an existing forklift now.
Okay,
Patrick made sure there's double doors in terms of the ability of that forklift to fit through there and deliver the pallets of, whether it's water valves, gate valves, pipe fittings, or oil, or differential fluid, whatever needs to be delivered. Can move around the site. So we talked through that in detail, and again, we're trying to be conscientious of the
you're
budget.
gonna make it work.
We'll make it work.
And the same with the storage cover business, and the canopy over the fuel island. Can you take the one from the current site at the canopy and take it?
I don't have one today.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
No.
Oops. Okay.
And I know a few employees really wanted it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
perhaps if there's some savings, it's about a $40,000 cut that we made. I suppose if there's savings elsewhere, we can take a look at that.
Okay.
That's part of that owner's contingency. But again, I gotta feel comfortable that we're
Yeah.
far enough along in the process, there aren't surprises.
Last week, I was pleased to read that the price of, in the Wall Street Journal, that the price of lumber has gone down 41%. That is major for, it hasn't been that long that you talked with us about how the estimates for this project have gone up because of, lumber. So it's a good thing that prices are heading down. The exhaust system hasn't been compromised. I'm
No.
glad that you're able to do that. I think that's very important. And you explained the owner's contingency, what happens to when there's money left over? So let's say there's $500,000 that you haven't spent. Do you go ahead and just pull in one of these things that,
The canopy,
the
for
canopy?
example.
Yeah,
That
you would
certainly
just
could
go
be in
ahead
this.
and keep spending until you reach the maximum that we're authorizing. Suddenly I was thinking about that today.
I think we have to be careful with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Things that we cut, for example, the fuel canopy might be one that I might go to Ron and ask to
Mm-hmm.
add back in. The others are actually design things that have already been changed. For example, the concrete walls that were gonna come up, and then the steel building was gonna sit on the concrete
Mm-hmm.
walls. Well, they've been designed already to ground. It's too late. I can't undo that.
Mm-hmm.
If we're even 25% done with the project, we can't undo things like that. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I appreciate your explanation, too. I think what is an FFE?
That's your
Furniture, fixtures, and
equipment.
Equipment, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Somebody once, a long time ago, said if you take the building and you pick it up and you shake it and everything that falls out, that's FF.
FFE,
I don't know if it's a very good explanation,
okay.
but
And I certainly support a new appraisal before you sell it. I want to be, I want to be sure that we don't move prematurely. So all of a sudden, somebody buys it and they want possession in 6 months, and we aren't ready yet. Make it happen so that our employees, and so that that transition is smooth. I think we have to respect them
Yep.
and our processes first.
I agree, Commissioner. Yep.
Let's see. And I asked Ron right before the meeting about the renovation that's in the contract for the El Paso facility. And so are we just not doing that? That there's not going to be a renovation of El
There was some dollars, Ron, in the original contract, I believe, of BBN to take a look at El Paso.
I think there's been some suggestions that the architect has made, but they're not factored into this contract.
No,
Okay.
not with McCall Gordon's GMP. There's
Because we're
nothing.
selling the building.
No, we're not
Not
selling.
El Paso.
That's Parks and Rec. Okay, all right.
Yep.
There are parts of it that are really obsolete too, but
Yes.
that's not part, so contract, the primary contract, it's in the primary contract. It's just not in amendment number 1.
It's in the design contract, right?
Yeah,
The original.
but you're not going forward.
I got that correct, Patrick? Yep.
Yeah, that'll be another decision if, I would say, once we build the new facility, we can assess what it is we need to do there and what equipment we're gonna store there, and so that's that would come back to you at a future date.
To me, this project is just so much more money than when we went to the ballot initiative in 2019, I think, it was only going to be 12 million for the joint maintenance facility. So it has turned out, I'm not willing to expend more. I think we're doing a modest job, and I know your intent, you're determined to push this through. But anyway, that's just me, and just future warning.
Yeah.
Okay,
You know, you talked about, so when we, this happens to be futures on steel. So when we talked to you in December, this is where we were at. We're just below 750. Today, it's at 1759 on steel. That's how much things have changed since we talked to you all in December. And obviously, we gave you a memo about a month ago on the concern of where things were going.
Can you use your influence with steel and pipe?
They have to pay that too.
Oh, they do, okay,
There, yes,
okay.
Commissioner Hattasol is correct.
All right, thank you very much for answering
ahead,
the
sir.
questions.
I got just a couple of things. So that long laundry list of things that you cut out, did that save us $500,000, $1.5 million? What was the approximate guess on that?
Oh, geez. I'd have to go back to spreadsheets. 2 million?
Okay, so that was significant cuts to get it to a point where it's only a couple million more than we thought it was gonna be a while back.
Yeah.
So we're really, yeah, okay. It really was, went up 4 million more or so, at least from before. Got it. Okay, the next question is, is the building sort of being designed so that it could be added on to in 15 to 20 years and without upsetting everything?
I'm sorry I didn't bring that slide tonight. In our December update, Commissioner, there was a slide that had some areas that are built for expansion of, so for example, like this happens to be the mechanics and maintenance base. Well, this is just open parking. This is just an open parking area. There's no structures. So that could be expanded this way. And then if I remember right, Patrick, I think this area might have been for the office. So there's some room, again, if we needed to add offices, do that as well. What we can't do without a lot of expense is the mezzanine area. We can't put employees up there. We don't have the elevator, we don't meet all the ADA standards, so on and so forth. But it is tempered storage. I mean, when I go down to the Parks Department, they've got a lot of Whoville Christmas lights and all sorts of things that aren't maybe being stored the way they could be, and better storage.
So is the mezzanine in or out? Because you have the alpha
in.
and the beta.
It's in.
In, okay, we're talking about the 70,000 square feet with the mezzanine, but not for, only for storage.
Yep.
Okay, got it. Well, I'll bet the first person who wants to take me up on it that $50 says we'll burn through the contingency, every cent of it.
Okay.
Simply because, when you're building your own house or using your own money, there's a contingency fund and you weigh, I should put my money into this, that, or the other thing. Because it's your money, you may not spend it all. On something like this, the argument will be made by you or somebody, and we'll all go, you're right, that makes sense. But it's already been allotted for. We've already got it in the bonding paperwork. We've already said it's okay to include that as a contingency. But I know the way government building projects and stuff work, that if there's money to be spent, the government will spend it. And so we're just going to assume that I'm going to assume, you guys can do whatever you want, but I'm going to assume that contingency is going to get used up because of the fact that some of these $2 million items are probably pretty good thing to actually have. And so I'm just going to assume that that's all going to be spent. And if anybody disagrees with me, talk to me later and we'll put some money on it.
Okay.
Sure.
Alright.
Yes, hi Rob. So I just have a few questions, just to clarify some numbers. I'm okay with the 143 for the amended, for BBN. As far as the 20 million guaranteed maximum price, so I have three numbers, and you just need to explain them for more
Absolutely.
clarification for me. I have 20 million guaranteed maximum price, then I have, on the other page, you have 22.4. I want to know, what does that mean? Because I also see the 143 amendment in there. And then on the other page, you have 24.5 million. With the bond and interest, all of the breakdown of where all of these funds are coming from. So can you just walk through
Absolutely.
with me? I had the same thought process as Commissioner Hattasol did. There's always change orders. And if we mean guaranteed maximum price, I see 24 million on one end, and I see 20 million as what we are doing. So just explain what all of those numbers to me, just as though I'm a first grader, and you
Yep.
have to just tell me.
So the guaranteed maximum price is at that 20.2. So
Right.
that's the contract for that pitcher.
Right,
That affords us that. What I wanted to show you all is how much we spent, because we need to, this is all gonna get bonded together. All the costs from the beginning of time, which is the March of 2016. You know, a lot of times, well, there's hidden costs, and you're not showing everything, you're not being transparent. That's what I tried to do with this slide. I'm trying to show you all everything that's been spent on this project, and also what I anticipate to be spent in terms of like the water quality component, the AV equipment, the stuff for FF&E. So the 20.2 I carried from the previous slide to right here. And then we've got to bond it all.
right,
And we've got to have dollars to pay for all this. Right now, it's kind of being carried in the red. So that's where the next slide is the 24.5. All I did was round up from 22,455 so that I can tell Randy and Brian and Rena and Rebecca, this is what we can anticipate that we need to put into our forecast sheets for those various funds. So Eddie knows that he's going to lose 52,000 once it's bonded in 2024 for 20 years. No different than what I'll have to do in the street maintenance. Just like we pay off projects, Special Street and Highway has been used for decades for safety improvement projects and other projects in the community. But you have to carry that bonding cost out until it ends. It's like a mortgage. It just happens to be for public improvement. So when I make the final payment, I have to make sure I can make all my mortgage payments or all my bonding payments, and that's the reason why I just rounded up to 24.5. So did I help you
Right.
at all?
and this is the funding source, these are the dedicated.
These are the fundings. Yep.
These are the dedicated funding sources. So when you go back to the 22 million, what you're saying is, within that 22 million, the 20 million is in there, but we've spent 2.4 million already above that, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think I understand it a
Yeah,
little bit
this-
better.
Yeah, and again, I was just trying to be transparent with the master budget of
Right.
what we have spent, what we're asking you to consider tonight, and then what we're anticipating in the future.
Yeah, I think, we are going to see some change orders come before us, whether they fall in that 1 million or more. I'm not sure. We've experienced that with the airport and other projects that we had before us. This is a long time coming, but I feel like if we prolong it, it's just going to get more and more expensive. So I just want us to get it done, but have quality work as far as getting the whole facility finished and getting it to work where we need to get everybody in place and getting everything in place. I would like to see the resolution in a comprehensive manner when it comes to us and read through it a little bit more. I think this is the best probably we can do, and hopefully it won't exceed much more than what you were telling us tonight, because costs are gonna get more, and I always think we get change orders all the time.
I know that on the steel side, I believe there was a letter issued from some of the steel manufacturers that if we delay past July 1, some of them said somewhere between 10 and 12% increase after July 1.
So can we get those contracts already signed before July 1 so that we are,
Yes.
adhering to them? Even if
Patrick
we
and I
don't-
think Barry,
Yeah.
they're going to have, what did you call it, a combat boot camp, 3-4 day, all-day sessions to run through and get those on order.
Right, okay, all right, thank you.
Mayor?
Yeah, I'll just say real quick, it's on the selection committee from the beginning of this project, and it, clearly is a important project that it runs, the services that are provided out of the joint maintenance facility are the services that the city's expected to provide, and that run the backbone of the city, and that if you don't have, you notice, but if they're running smoothly, you rarely ever notice. So it's hard to be a popular project, and it's hard to be flashy, but I've been fully supportive of this, and I think in part because of the condition of the facilities we currently have are in such horrible shape, and our retention and our staff are so bad there, that hopefully, as you've gone through this $2 million in cuts, you haven't eliminated the things that are going to be exciting for staff to use. When you talk about eliminating the crane, you know, that as somebody that worked on tank motors, that's important, right? Like these things are important to have that unfortunately sound like they're not going to be there. At the same time, the price has gone up significantly, and there's nothing we can do. That's change the market. The conditions have changed, but so I agree with everyone. We got to get this done. That's why we're having the special meeting. That's why, not to belabor it any longer, but please don't do whatever you can, even if it's betting Mark or whatever, to get those things to keep the staff happy in those places, because that's what we really, that's been the driving force behind this project for me, is get the better conditions for the workplace so we can provide the services for the city.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mayor?
Okay, before we take public comment, I want to hit back on that RFP sale, because I missed it. If you folks mentioned it, I didn't hear it, but, you know, I'm all for the, you know, request for proposals to get that out there. And of course, the intent here is that whatever money is obtained from selling those properties would be applied against the general obligation bonds that will eventually be issued, which will drive down the price of it. And also inherent in that is, for sure, you're not gonna allow somebody to take over the property until you're ready. So, you know, just like any other real estate deal, the time they
Closing.
occupy it is at our convenience, not theirs. And that'd be part of it. And so I would just appreciate if all the commissioners either confirm, you know, that and tell Rob to proceed or not.
Yes, get the most out of it.
Yes, absolutely. That's why I'm interested in a new appraisal. I did want to ask, our motion information doesn't include the sale of the, okay, we're going to do that another time, okay.
Correct.
That's why I wanted him to
Intent
get
to
some
sale,
guidance on
I
that
see.
tonight.
That's
Yep.
what, just verbal or
Yep, just verbal.
concurrence.
Again,
Okay.
you can, you will review when we bring the
Yeah.
RFPs back to you.
Yeah.
We'll probably talk internally whether we'll have one of you sit on the selection committee or not. We'll just need to talk through that internally a little bit.
Okay, so it sounds like, you know, the commission's behind you on that. Does anyone wish to make public comment on this particular issue? Okay, seeing no one for public comment, we'll go back to the commission. I guess we can entertain a motion on this thing.
Mayor, I move that we approve and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute a contract amendment number 1 in the amount of $143,600 for the final design with Bowman and Novick of Manhattan, Kansas. Approve the proposed GMP in the amount of $20,204,762, and authorize the city administration to finalize and the mayor and the city clerk to execute amendment number 1 to the agreement and general conditions between owner and construction manager between the city and McCown Gordon Construction of Manhattan, Kansas, and approve resolution number 02221A, authorizing and providing for the design and construction and the financing of the joint maintenance facility for water, wastewater, street, fleet, forestry, and parks.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. City clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Morse,
Yes,
Commissioner Hassel,
Yes?
Commissioner Estabrook,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddy.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which we're going to move into the work session portion of the meeting, which will be presentations. The commission will not be voting on anything else this evening. And first thing on the work session is 2022 budget review of outside agencies' requests. And there'll be presentations made by various agencies this evening. After each presentation, there'll be a time for the commission to ask questions and the agency, and we'll also pick up public comments at that time. So the first presenter is Rena Neal, Director of Finance, to talk to us a little bit about budget.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I will provide a brief overview since our last work session in terms of where we are on the budget calendar. So tonight, we will discuss the various outside agencies and their requests. The fourth budget work session is scheduled for July 13th. And then to comply with Senate Bill 13 requirements, the city will need to notify the Potawatomi County Clerk and Raleigh County Clerk by July 20th on whether the city intends to exceed the revenue neutral rate. The fifth budget work session is scheduled for July 27th and will focus on utility budgets. City administration will also need direction regarding funding levels for the budget publication on August 26th at that July 27th work session. The sixth and final budget work session will be on August 24th. And then on September 7th, at the regular city commission meeting, the tax rate hearing and the public hearing on the 2022 city budget and 2022 to 2026 capital improvement program will be presented. So this week, on Thursday, we will provide forecast sheets for our various funds, and we will also provide you with a valuation breakdown so you can review and be prepared for those future budget work sessions. In terms of tonight's meeting, the Wolf House has provided their request, which is in your packet at the end, but they have no presentation. We do have Cheryl Collins here to answer any questions should you have any.
Thank you for not asking for more. It's $5,000. It's been $5,000 for how long? Long time.
So if there are no other questions for Ms. Collins, our first presenter will be Linda Nutt with the Manhattan Public Library. I will bring up her PowerPoint presentation, and then in the order, there will be Ann Smith with the Flint Hills Area Transportation Agency, Penny Simpton with the Manhattan Arts Center, Dennis Cook with Aggieville Business Association, Gina Scroggs with Downtown Manhattan, Inc., Marsha Hornong from the Social Services Advisory Board, and Chris Bailey with the Special Alcohol Fund Advisory Board. And I will make sure to help all presenters pull this information up.
Okay, welcome, Linda.
Thank you. It's good to be here in person this year. I'm Linda Nupp, and I'm the director of the Manhattan Public Library. And to begin, I would just like to introduce or review the members of the Manhattan Public Library Board. Members of the board are appointed by the commission to 2 four-year terms. That's the option. And the mayor always sits on the board during his or her term. So our current board is comprised of Elaine Shannon, our president, Carrie Spencer, vice president, Tyler Darnell, Carolyn Elliott, Stacy Kohlmeyer, and Medat Morkos, Jamie Morris Hardiman, and Mayor Wynn Butler. And I'd like to also introduce Ronna Hargett, who's the head of Learning and Information Services at the library, who's here tonight. The basis for public library funding is established by a Kansas state statute and local ordinance. And that we have 4 sources of revenue, and 2 are the general fund and our employee benefit fund. The general fund is 75% of library revenue, and it is the primary source of funding for the operation of our library and our facilities, our salaries, our collections, equipment, utilities, and all building maintenance and upkeep. The $2,866,150 is a 2.42% increase over 2021, or an additional $67,650. It does include the 5th payment of 10 payments on the expansion bond, so we're halfway there. We budgeted the same amount in 2021 as we did in 2020. It was flat, but we did not receive all the revenue as expected. We came up short with delinquencies. $662,890 is budgeted for employee benefits, and that includes your standard things like capers, workers' comp, unemployment, and health insurance. Because there will be some carryover in the account this year, there will be a 5.48% decrease in this fund. And the library does continue to participate with the City of Manhattan's health insurance program, and we appreciate that opportunity. Our non-tax sources of revenue include grants, fees, and interest, and our endowment funds. We anticipate receiving a little over $100,000 in grants, fines, fees, and interest, and this supplements the care of the facility and maintenance and the collections that the public enjoys. This particular source of revenue has declined significantly over the past decade, with reductions in state aid to public libraries of over 75% in that time. The endowment provides 5% of our total library revenue, includes gifts from donors and disbursements from the Manhattan Library Foundation, which supports the really fine collection of materials and resources that the library offers, as well as some special projects. The Manhattan Library Association, our Friends of the Library, raise money through memberships, through used book sales, and this year, a brand new fundraising activity with a quilt raffle. Local quilters have made and donated 16 quilts in support of this year's summer reading theme, Tales and Tales, with animals and stories. And there is still time for people to visit the library and see these incredible works of art that are hanging all around the atrium, and you can pick your favorites before the drawing in August. The Friends also manage and accept donations of used books in good condition for resale in Rosie's Corner on the first floor, and we're really looking forward to resuming the annual book sale, our biggest fundraiser in 2022. In the meantime, the used book corner is open, and all proceeds from Friends support programs and collections at the library. Library volunteers, including those who help with our routine tasks or special projects, the teens that help with our summer reading program, and the dedicated ongoing support of the Friends, the Foundation, and the board truly reflect the best of citizen engagement and support for library services in Manhattan. Here's a summary of total library revenue for 2022. All sources of revenue in 2022 total $3,833,340, with a total increase over 2021 of $26,490. The impact on the mill levy remains under 6 mills at 5.871, or a 0.375% mill increase. Obviously, the past year's been challenging and different for everyone, and all services have been different, but the libraries continue to provide services to all residents in the community with information and materials for all ages, all backgrounds, and all interests, in traditional and in new ways. The past year's escalated the use of digital resources, including LinkedIn Learning, to build and learn technology and business skills, BrainFuse to help parents and students with homework and online tutoring, Help Now for job hunters, resume writing and professional coaching for job hunters, virtual programs, make and take kits, outreach activity, and partnerships to extend the reach of the library into the community. And we also, of course, have free access to the digital newspapers, magazines, ebooks, audiobooks, and streaming movies 24/7 with a library card, in addition to the excellent print and physical collection of media. The reports from our automated system tell us that between January and mid-June of this year, the average cardholder has checked out $500 worth of books and physical items alone. Year to date for all cardholders, that's over $3,633 based on the cost of those items. That stack of materials adds up fast, and I'm sure if you brought children to the library, you know the value of those services. The circulation of physical items and door count are climbing back up quickly since the wide availability of the vaccine, and we've seen that change very quickly in the past month or two. Still, this time has shown that there are more ways than ever to use the library, and there are more choices than ever before of how, when, and where you use the library services. And in closing, I'd like to encourage everyone to visit the library and explore their interests. Get a card, be one of the 33,000 library members who have a card, join the current 3,000 summer reading participants before the end of July, and you can sign up for any of these things at mhklibrary.org or visit the library in person. Thank you for your time, Commissioners. It's been a pleasure to serve the residents of Manhattan.
Yeah, I have a question. So, I know you mentioned fines, grants, and fees, I think, on there. And I'm confident that our family, including my girls back there, have contributed to those late fees on some. But there was a period of time where that was waived. Was that during or?
It was waived, and we adopted a policy to no longer charge overdue fees. Instead, we're charging for those materials sooner when they're not returned. And there's several reasons for that. That revenue was cut into from credit card fees as people begin to use credit cards more than cash. So when you're charging a dime for a fee and your fines are, a certain amount, we were seeing a loss in that.
Okay.
The other part is the foundation has provided funds for self-check machines, and we're remodeling our circulation and response. We've had this plan in place, but it's also a very timely response to the pandemic for contactless service if people choose to use that service. And in doing so, buying those machines and implementing the cash machines and the change machines and the maintenance of that equipment far outweighed the money collected on overdues. So it has been a trend in public libraries to reduce that barrier to service, if you will, but it also wasn't really paying off when you compare the revenue to the expense of handling those, staff handling as well.
Thanks.
My question might be more for Rena. So the budget increase from the general fund is the $67,650, correct? Or not? My question is
That's their general fund.
okay, I know, that's their, how much they're getting out of our general fund.
No, they have their own separate fund that the levy is associated with.
Okay, so that's because the mill increase is like 0.38, but we've always been told that a mill is about 600,000, so a $67,000 increase would be just a little over 0.1 mil.
It's 0.37, so it's just a little over a quarter of a mil increase. The total increase in all tax accounts is $29,190.
All right, hold on.
And I'm including the decrease in the employee benefit fund and the increase in the general fund.
So, okay, I was just looking at the general fund, but it's not, their general fund mill would be a different amount than our general fund mill, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. When it shows up on the budget certificate that the city submits to the county clerk, we are a separate fund line, just as the police department is and several other fund lines that the city
Okay.
manages.
All right,
Does that make sense, Mark?
not quite.
Because the 26,490, I believe, is the difference from 21.
Exactly.
So the 67 won't come in as a line item. The entire
Right, I know.
library.
So if you go to the next slide with the bar graph, I guess you can't blow it up like I can on my laptop here, but
sorry.
yeah, I was just looking at the general fund went up 0.38, and then the overall at the bottom mill levy went up 0.88. No, 0.48, 0.38. Whatever it is, there's 0.38 difference for total mills and 0.38 difference for the general fund. My question is, if a mill is 600,000, 0.38 times 600,000 is 240,000, but it's showing there's not $240,000 increase, is there, in their budget?
I'd have to look back to Rebecca. We'll have that valuation breakdown next time.
Because over the
Yeah.
course of the next few hours and weeks, everybody's going to be looking at what's the mill levy impact. And I just
Yep.
want to make sure 60,000 would only be like 0.1 mil, but this is showing a 0.38 mil impact. And so I was curious as why that was different. We'll figure it out. You guys
Yeah, we
don't
will.
forget, we'll talk about it some more.
We'll bring our valuation breakdown. I hadn't seen these numbers, and we can double check them and make sure everything's
Okay,
panning out.
that's fine. Okay. thank you.
Historically, the commission's been concerned about remaining totally under 6 mills with both accounts.
Yes.
And this, according to my understanding and current information on valuations, this will achieve that objective. And we have been doing that for over 20 years.
And Linda, did you use 600K? Did you use the adjusted mill levy rate? Because you may not. I don't know if you did.
I don't know. I got the figures from the
Yeah.
county clerk, and I don't have them in front of me.
Because the new number, the 600's up and above what last year's mill was worth. So that might be a little bit of the discrepancy too.
Okay, that's fine, we'll just.
I
keep an eye on
didn't see a huge increase in valuations.
It was small.
It was very small.
Exactly.
But there was a small increase in valuations.
it. Okay, thank you.
So double check me, and if you have other questions,
Yes,
I'm at
as
the
I,
library.
as I looked at the numbers, it was under the 6 mills, because that's been my question every year, is to be sure the employee benefit fund and the total library budget. But the new twist on it now is it's not tax revenue neutral.
I know.
And so what happens is, between the library and RCPD, the city can never be tax revenue neutral.
Yes, and, we'll have that discussion. If the library's budget alone was the only piece that pushed us over the edge without,
Yep.
shifting budgets, we would be willing to have that conversation with UNC. I know at information I received from the League of Kansas Municipalities and Kansas Municipal Services, everybody's kind of thinking it's going to be hard not to maintain a revenue neutral rate, especially when you get to November and you don't really know what the final valuation is. So it's an unusual year to figure this out and figure out what's going to happen, and then be charged for that as a public entity next year. And we'll have to figure out how we split those costs, and I have not seen a formula for that yet.
And then the other point that I guess maybe not everyone's aware of is that, the library presents the budget, the commission can't vote it down, because it's an outside agency and it's covered by a charter ordinance. So it's just like RCPD, when the law board passes a budget, the city gets it, and that's that. We can't say, no, we reject it, we want to reduce it. And the same's true for the library, and that's just something everybody needs to be aware of.
One last question. You said you weren't able to do the book sale last year, and you said that's one of your bigger and better fundraisers. Does that mean it's a $2,000 fundraiser, a $10,000 fundraiser, $15,000 fundraiser?
The middle one.
10,000 or so.
B.
It's worth doing, now, for sure. Okay.
So it's been about that over the years.
Okay.
And again, we're gonna have to see, the donations, and that's been stalled out a little bit because we have a lot of volunteers who do all of that work for us, and many of them are in the high-risk groups, so they've been careful coming in, but they're back in, they're ready to go to work, and we're so happy to see them again at the library.
Just my comments. I have been impressed with how readily you embrace technology, and you have brought a lot of change to the library, and just in recent years, as you've had to how do you adjust to COVID? And even before that, you were making the kinds of changes that, keep people, you don't become obsolete because you're a book library, you are also a technology library. So I'm pleased with our library overall and how you serve. You said 33,000 people here. That's impressive and worthy. I also have been impressed that you've stayed under the 6 mills, and you mentioned I wasn't paying attention 20 years ago, but I have been for the last 6 or 7 years. So just to say that makes it easier for us when we're not pushing too hard against the top always.
Yeah.
And so and I want to wish you, I haven't had a chance to talk with you since you had a major announcement about your retirement. Is that
That's true.
the end of the year or what, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
We for sure want to wish you well. So this is your last budget.
This is it. Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I think the concerns with the budget ahead, and because we do have a foundation, and we do have a foundation that's interested in continued support for the library, we have been able to maintain this. And normally, valuations have been different in the past, so usually the next time we really see this chart, it has flattened out considerably, and it has been relatively flat. We may still have that higher bump by the time this is over with this time around. But our challenges really are, like anybody else, the inflation right now, and the cost if we have to buy equipment or computers, an aging facility. Mm-hmm. We have a boiler that was installed in 1967 when the building was originally done. So we've had studies done on our ventilation system. We know that's something we want to address in the next 3 or 4 years. So we are putting that money into capital improvement and trying to be good stewards of that money so it doesn't become a problem for us or for the city who owns the building when that hits. So we're trying to plan ahead. It's, you know, building maintenance things are not the most fun things to deal with. They're invisible investments, but, you know, we had a power failure the other night with that outage, and when we came in on the hottest day of the year, it was hot. And thank goodness we had good response, but all those things are the basis of your service, to have a comfortable and safe facility. And so those things are important for us to be able to move money into that capital improvement fund and be prepared for the next roof, the next boiler, the next whatever happens to a facility.
Well, just to say, I think you have done a good job
Okay.
during your tenure.
Thank you, Linda.
So Linda, this is Commissioner Reddy. I think, again, you've done an outstanding job. I've been on the library board off and on for the past 7 years. It's one of those gems in our community. I always like to, as an educator, I know how the children's library is used so frequently, the children's book section. You've made a great transition online, and I think that's been used a lot. I don't know who your social media person is, but I try to constantly share whatever they're doing, because people are always looking for resources and how to keep their children engaged. And I'm glad they're able to come back in person, but I think that online present is still going to be one of the benefits that happened from the pandemic, how to transition and keep it moving forward. There's a lot of people that don't have access to the library for one reason or another, but now they've been accommodated into that presence as well. So thank you and congratulations again on your own retirement.
Well, thank you. I'll pass that information on to Maddie Ogle, our communications person, and that just brings me around to say I would really like to give a shout out to the staff who were so supportive and worked so well as a team throughout the years and through this difficult time with setting up our IT so we could work remotely, provide services remotely, ensure that those kinds of things ran smoothly, and to the public service staff who, on the front line, took some grief. You know, everybody's confused and frustrated during this period, but they were able to offer pickup service, curbside, so many things during the initial period. And as we made changes, which just seemed to occur every week, they adjusted rapidly and with a lot of courage, and I appreciate the staff so much.
Okay, thank you, Linda. We're going to take some public comments. I want to make one other comment. You know, you do a lot on technology, and what I've always found of interest the past few years, when you check out materials at the library, it gives you a little number there in dollars and says this is what it would have cost if you'd bought this stuff during the year. And, you know, I'm always looking at budget, and if you want something to show you return on investment on your tax dollars, that's it for sure, because this year already, I'm way over any 6 mils the library would have charged on usage. And so best value, I can't complain
So
about.
you're part of that $3,600,000 in savings.
At least my part of what I pay in property tax. I
Well,
mean,
good.
I clearly get that, you know, recovered, you know, right there from just my use of the library.
And that doesn't even cover the digital resources. We just don't have a way to capture that yet.
That's correct. But I check out a lot of books, so
I do
that's where it
too.
comes out there. So, do we have any public comments on the library? Okay, seeing none, we'll close that. Thank you, Linda.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Next, we'll have Ann Smith with Flint Hills Area Transportation Agency.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to you this evening. I'll just run through my slides. If you have any questions, please just ask. Just very briefly, a little bit about us in case any of the viewers or any of you aren't quite sure about all of our services. In Manhattan, we operate fixed routes citywide and on K-State's campus. We also have a service called the K-18 Connector. That is a fixed route that runs from Ogden to Manhattan. And then we also have curb-to-curb demand response services for seniors, the disabled, and for folks who do not reside within the areas of Manhattan served by the fixed routes. We do have a trip planning capability through Google Maps. You can use your smartphone or your computer. We're also working on a new app that we will roll out later this summer. It'll be called Transit App, and it will be a real-time app that will let you do live planning of your trips. So you'll be able to actually see when the bus will be at the bus stop, and it will help you plan that. And you can literally, I've seen some presentations. It's pretty amazing. You can literally watch the bus move on the map. It's pretty. So we're looking forward to having that later this summer. We also have introduced a Token Transit, which is an electronic fare media. Again, it's a free app that you can download onto your phone, and you can buy all of our fare media electronically, and then you have just a icon that you show the bus driver, so you don't have to carry cash or a ticket card with you anymore. So, prior to COVID, we have been seeing a significant increase in the use of Manhattan citywide fixed routes. As you can well imagine, COVID has had a dramatic impact on our services. However, 59% of our fixed route services are being provided by the Manhattan citywide routes. Prior to COVID, we were anticipating a record number of trips annually for the citywide routes. At the worst, ridership dropped off by over 80% after COVID began, and it has slowly begun to recover. This does not include the K-18 connector. One of the things I do want to point out during COVID that we did still have a lot of people riding the bus who had to get to work, who had to get to medical appointments, and for other reasons that they needed to be able to have access to transportation. And while we did reduce our levels of service and had to restrict capacity on buses, we never stopped operating. Prior to COVID, this is kind of a map that shows you where our primary trip generators in Manhattan are. As you can see, they're pretty well spread out across town. And then this shows you the impact that COVID had on ridership. Our K-18 connector also was seeing growth in its ridership, and again also had a significant drop-off in ridership once COVID began. However, of the services, it had the least reduction, and the primary reason that people were riding that bus is to get to work. And that gives you kind of an idea of ridership during COVID as well. Financial information from you. If you'll recall, last year we received CARES Act funding, and we returned funds that had been awarded for local match purposes to all of our funding partners. And that included returning money to the city of Manhattan. We were able to return $129,882 to Manhattan. One thing I wanted to share with you is the economic impact that Adibus as a company has on our local economy here in Manhattan. Even in spite of COVID, In 2020, we purchased $146,580 in fuel. Our employees who live in Manhattan earned over $800,000 in wages, and we purchased over $260,000 in goods and services in Manhattan. So we have a significant economic impact just as a company ourselves outside of the economic impact that our riders provide to the economy of Manhattan as well. 78% of our residences and 83% of our apartments and dorms have access within a 5-minute walk of a bus stop. 62% of our businesses, 100% of our grocery stores, 67% of our medical providers, and 56% of our social services are all within a 5-minute walk of a bus stop. And these are just some comments that we've received over time from some of our riders. So our goals for 2022, we're working to restore full levels of service over the summer and fall. Ridership, as I mentioned, is beginning to recover. We have eased capacity constraints on the buses now, and services on campus will return to full levels in the fall. We are going to be making some minor adjustments to the citywide routes, but you can pay attention to social media or our website for any changes that are coming. I will point out to you, like all other surface transportation providers receiving federal funds, we are under the federal mask mandate through Federal Transit Administration until September 13th. So if you're riding the bus, you do still have to wear a mask. So we have some upcoming ADA improvements that include sidewalks and ADA ramps, concrete pads, and shelters and benches. We're planning to install the first bus shelter at West Loop. It was designed, we sponsored a design studio with the College of Architecture, Planning and Design. MATC has fabricated 3 shelters. And so the first one is done, it just has to be galvanized, and the other 2 are approaching being done as well. So we also worked with the city staff and the city to secure KDOT funding for projects on the 600 block of points and Fremont and North Manhattan. And we are leveraging those opportunities to bring an additional $929,500 of federal transit funds to the city of Manhattan. I'd be happy to take any questions that you have. And thank you very much for the opportunity to visit with you this evening.
Where's the bus stop? Wait, I don't know, it's got a roof, what do you call it?
Shelter.
Shelter at West Loop, where is it gonna be?
So, do you know where the crosswalk is? Right in the middle
Across
of the park?
Anderson?
No, in the West Loop parking lot.
Okay,
You know where that crosswalk is?
yes,
So it'll be just to the east of there.
okay,
There's a stop now. We're sponsoring a blessing box also that you
Uh-huh.
can see right there right
Okay.
now.
good.
So it's gonna be in that location.
I know that the community has been interested in getting some of those bus shelters for a
Yep.
long time. Where are you planning to put the other 2?
Well, we have not decided completely yet. We're working, we've just recently secured an A&E vendor, and we're gonna work with them to determine where those other 2 are gonna go. But we do have some sidewalk and ADA, other improvements, and potentially benches to put out. So we can come back and update you on that when we
Okay,
get
that'd be good.
those decided.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I think, I had a similar question about the bus benches and shelters. So if you put it on the sidewalks, you're probably gonna have to work with the city to make sure, the width and the length, because primarily they're made for other purposes. And this would be something that I'm sure you would have to work with the city on,
Well,
right?
we've been very fortunate to have Karen Becker serving on our A&E steering committee. So she's been able to give us some very good feedback on things that we'll need to be doing, and of course, we'll work with the city as we move forward with anything.
And in a previous conversation, maybe not last year, but the year before, you said you were having a hard time hiring bus drivers. How is that situation going?
It's still been pretty tough. We've increased our starting wage for qualified drivers to $15 an hour. And we are also offering $1,000 sign-on bonus as well, but it's still tough. And COVID hasn't made it any easier, unfortunately.
Sure. Is there certain training they need to have? Let's say you hired them.
So they need to have a CDL, a driver's license with a passenger endorsement to qualify for the $15 an hour. If they don't have those things, we will train them to get their CDL with PAC endorsement. And then after a year, they'll be increased to the higher wage rate.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Would you be able to go back to that slide that shows the economic impact?
Yes, sir.
Because I feel like ever since I started paying attention to the public transit discussion, it's been a lot of discussion of how much it's, costs taxpayers to fund an operation. So it's good to see that is being put back into the community in ways through, that's over $1 million there. But also, you gave the city back some federal funding last year, which is a pretty unique opportunity. That was over $100,000.
Yes.
And I think we're starting to see, as those cool bus stops and things come about, but the economic development in the community and people are seeking out how close they are to access those stops. And that increases property value, increases different elements when people are looking at how livability and affordability, how close it is to ATA. And it's just such a different conversation than it was even a decade ago about how much it's going to cost to run this thing to how much are we getting out of it. And I feel like that return on investment is important to really acknowledge has happened.
It is, and plus I would notice also we have the other almost $1 million. If I can find it here, there we go.
Right,
For
with
those
the
projects
downtown,
as well,
yeah.
So
Working with Rob and Public Works and leveraging those grants for our streets and the repairs there.
yes,
So thank you, and thanks to John, president of the board over there.
Yep.
Thanks for being here.
I have a question. Where do we pay for the ATA fund out of? Is it a transient guest tax thing, or is it just strictly general fund, sales tax, which one?
So it's general fund.
General fund, okay.
Multiple revenue sources, but primarily would be sales tax component, and
Was that ever convention or transient guest tax funded? No.
I don't think so.
Okay, I misremembered that from several years ago or something, so, okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, no, that was never funded in any other fashion except the general fund.
Andy, I know we're still getting information from the American Rescue Plan. Do you anticipate potentially some funding that allows some of the supplemental funds to be used, like you were able to return some money last year?
so we received a much smaller amount in this most recent round. So at this point, short of the infrastructure bill being passed, which does have additional funding for transit, we don't anticipate receiving any additional funding at this time.
All right, thank you.
I just wanted to say that I had a friend who was not able to drive for 2 months, and for medical reasons. and she relied on the bus ATA here. And, you know, it's an awakening when you have, you know it's there, and you trust that it's serving people, but when you have to use it, it really comes home that, and I did that after a surgery, but I just did it for 2 weeks. And, but it is a great resource. And I can't imagine the growth in this community, how we would have accommodated people and their needs to get around without the ATA, as this community has grown and spread out further and further. So I know you serve a very essential need.
Thank you. And I would tell you too that we have a mobility manager, Mike Wilson, who provides travel training. So anybody who is not familiar with public transportation, who finds themselves in a situation where they need it for the first time and they're uncomfortable or they're unsure about how to use it, we provide that service, and Mike can literally ride the bus with the individual and help them to learn everything that they need to about how it works.
Her only suggestion was, would you put the time the bus is coming on the pole? and I, you know, we've got all these fancy electronic things, and, you know, it's...
So one of the things we're going to be doing with the live feed app is every bus stop will have a number, and you will literally, if you don't have the technology, if you don't have a smartphone, you literally can text that number and you will get information about when the bus will be there next.
Good.
Okay, I think, you know, it's been excellent. You've been able to keep the, you know, the budget on ATA where it's been pretty consistent over the past few years. And you didn't mention, and, you know, it was something that took me a few years to figure out. I was always concerned about the fact that, you know, why don't we collect more money in fees, you know, revenue when you ride the bus. And then as I learned from you, that the way the federal government structures things, we get punished for doing that. And so that's why you don't see that as a big line item, and that's sometimes a little bit frustrating, but you don't get rewarded for collecting lots of fees. And so the contracts and the way ATA has managed the budget, I think, is quite frugal. I can't think of a better way of doing it than what you've been doing, because I don't think there's any way to squeeze anything else out of it for the service being provided. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So thank you. Is there any public comment on this particular topic tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on.
Next, we'll have the Manhattan Arts Center come forward. How are you?
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to present to you. I'm Penny Senfton. I'm the Executive Director of the Manhattan Arts Center. We were completely closed from mid-March to the end of May 2020. Since being allowed to reopen at the end of June, we have followed Riley County Health Department and CDC guidelines, and we feel extremely fortunate, having heard some stories, that our patrons have mostly followed our procedures, and parents in particular have been very grateful for the attention we've paid to keeping everyone safe. In June, we restarted most of our programs other than those involving music, which we didn't feel our safe space allowed us to hold due to the risks involved with singing. Unfortunately, this meant eliminating Birdhouse acoustic music concerts and also musicals, which are usually one of our most profitable programs. To stay within health department guidelines, we cut our capacities to 50% or less. In the theater, this meant having 39 seats instead of 145. And this is what that looked like. So this is just one section, but one section on the left and then the whole theater on the right. Here you see what the clay studio looked like with distanced wheels. To do that, we also had to get some electrical work done, but we felt that was absolutely necessary. Clay is particularly beneficial for children especially those who do not immediately connect to two-dimensional art. Working with clay develops finger and hand muscles, encourages children to learn about texture, shapes, and forms, develops hand-eye coordination, all while working in the company of others. Over the 15 months of the pandemic, our revenue from admissions, tuition, and sponsorships has dropped more than $100,000. Although some lessons took place via Zoom, the drop in tuition in particular was due to lessons through the community school, which is our collaboration with the K-State School of Music, Theatre and Dance. In children's theatre, we were able to add additional sessions with lower enrollment, so the overall enrollment in the program was less impacted. This was, however, incredibly taxing on our staff, but we were determined to provide a safe and quality experience for the students and families who have come to depend on us. Thanks to several special grants, including CARES, Spark, and a PPP loan, we have been able to pay all our bills and have not had to let any staff go, which I'm incredibly grateful for. Here are the opening and closing shows in our theatre season. On the left is Arsenic and Old Lace, masked as you can see. It's a promotional video being filmed in Aggieville. The elderly sisters helped lonely older men over to the afterlife by lacing their elderberry wine with arsenic. On the right, you see the Three Musketeers. We cut costs, amongst other things, by using backdrop projections instead of building sets. For the Musketeers, we were fortunate enough, as you might notice, to secure a costume sponsor. With adults and children alike, performing in plays promotes self-confidence, memorization, and teamwork. Our group violin classes have taken place in the theatre, where students could easily keep their distance from each other. Playing the violin improves children's memory and attention span, helps in the development of sensory information, and encourages listening and teamwork. The violin recitals for these students were held outdoors at Sunset Zoo in fall last year and at All Faiths Chapel in spring this year. Recitals provide students with the chance to show parents and friends how much they've learned and give them something to be proud of. MAC has been collaborating with the K-State Art Department for a number of years, hosting a student MFA exhibit each year. Exhibits at MAC mean easy access for members of the community at large to see the students' work. Throughout its history, MAC has grown by responding to community demand for programs. We recently added 2 more classes for which there seemed to be popular demand: printmaking and metalsmithing. These classes are both for adults. For the kids, we assembled packages of supplies to eliminate sharing. That's those little things on the top left there. The MAC Watercolor Studio is a community within our larger arts community. They're mostly retired since they meet on Wednesday mornings, but they meet weekly almost year-round. During the pandemic, rather than stay home alone, when the weather permitted, they met outdoors in one of Manhattan's parks. Regular art sessions help reduce stress, promote a sense of accomplishment, and a general sense of well-being. This is from a small photography show of images documenting the early days of the pandemic. It's good to reflect on how far we've come. After careful consideration, we decided not to cancel our annual Wrap It Up art exhibit and sale. This show generally includes the work of 80 to 90 different artists, about 95% of whom are local. It's just amazing how many talented people we have when it comes to art in this community. We reduced the hours, especially at the weekends when we typically rely heavily on volunteer help. Nevertheless, last year Wrap It Up did extremely well, and we paid out $25,500 to artists. Several artists mentioned how glad they were that we didn't cancel the show, as their other shows had been canceled. These are just a few of the groups that have trusted us to provide a safe environment for their creative activities over the past year. The arts bring people together physically and culturally. They create a sense of community, and they create bonds that transcend differences. All this has a direct impact on community pride and unity. MAC is a place for community arts for all ages. It's a place where anyone can get involved. And one of the great things about art is that you don't have to be Picasso or Mozart to reap the benefits mentioned above of your chosen art activity. Talking of benefits, just yesterday at our board meeting, the board approved some small benefits for our staff. Our staff have never had any kind of benefits other than having free tickets to all the shows, of course. So we will be offering, it's QSARA, which is a qualified small employer health reimbursement arrangement. So based on how many hours they work with us, staff will be able to apply for reimbursement for their health insurance premiums. We've also just started working on a master plan, looking at all our programs, our facilities, and where we think we would like to be in the future. With an office staff of just under 3 full-time equivalent employees, we are proud of what we have accomplished and to be part of the Manhattan community. We're grateful that you understand the value of the programs we offer, and thank you for your continued support. If anyone has any questions, I could try to answer them.
Have you been the director for, was it 25, 27 years? How long have you been down there
It's
now?
20.
20 is all. Still a long time.
Yeah,
Great, thanks.
I still love it.
Hey Penny, Commissioner Reddy here. I think you guys do an outstanding job. I do appreciate all the work you've done, especially for the children in our community. Those hands-on activities are just so important. And although you said 3 FTE employees or equivalent of 3, you have hundreds of volunteers that really enjoy working there.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those programs that the Birdhouse we certainly miss, that we enjoy going to. So we look forward to that again. And I look forward to seeing what your 5, 10, 25-year master plan looks like, because there is a need in our community for arts, performing arts and clay and fine arts and the art shows that you have. And I think Clive Fulligar has been highlighting some of your artists, local artists,
Yeah.
and they've been extraordinary. So
Yeah.
I agree, we have a lot of local talent and we want to continue that. So thank you for what you're doing, and I really appreciate your work.
Thank you. If I could just clarify, those 3, that is office staff. There are a number of instructors for music and clay and all that, and we obviously pay them, and that is not included in that number, but, yeah, thank you.
I just want to add my praise too for the work that you do at the Arts Center. And I'm
Thank
glad
you.
we're able to help in some small way.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Are you planning on trying to have a big social event this year?
We are planning on having our annual fundraiser in person, yes.
Good.
We did send out a survey to see how people felt about that, and overwhelmingly people said that they would like to come in person, not too many people, but so we won't be trying to cram the place, but yes, we will.
September, October? No,
It's
August?
actually August.
August.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, very good.
yeah, thank you. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, any public comment on the Manhattan Arts Center? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item.
Next, we'll have Aggieville Business Association.
We sent you too much stuff, didn't we?
It's okay, sir. Here you go.
And then just arrows to change it?
Yep. Change.
Okay. Hi, good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Dennis Cook with the Aggieville Business Association. Got a short PowerPoint presentation for you, just in case you don't know about Aggieville. We got some stuff going on down there. This slide we've used before, that we're an old district, the oldest shopping district in Kansas, home to over 100 businesses. And I would like to say, just at the beginning, we got through 2020 and we didn't lose any businesses. We feel really good about that. It was not an easy year, but we got a whole lot going on and we're progressing. Chief to what we do is we have a 9-person board. We have a great board. It's Some of them are businesses in Aggieville, some of them are associate members who are outside of our Aggieville, but they are still an integral part of our board. And so we have, said 9 people, and then just on our staff, it's just myself and 2 interns. As far as our budget request, we are just asking for the same thing that we've asked since 2018. It's the same number of $60,000. We know that we're working really hard to be the best shopping district in Manhattan for the locals, for the visitors, and for the temporary residents. But we are really focused on the future. There's a lot happening with the Aggieville Vision down in our district, and we are trying to do our best to make sure that we can progress out of this. So with what's going on right now, for leading through this year and next year, we're adding a carefully planned parking solution, and then more working and living opportunities, and then just trying to be more attractive to bringing people into Aggieville. On our budget, it looks a lot the same. We have BID funds and some associate membership dues that come in, and then the funds we get from the city through the transient guest tax. And the only thing that changes up a little bit is how we're changing up some expenditures on the end. We have added a couple more events, and so we're moving a few things around like that. But otherwise, it's the exact same budget as last year. I love this. Jason can help me out with this timeline. It's a great moving target. We even talked about a little bit about this today. But where we are is, in this last year, we did see the 12th Street redevelopment, just between Morrow Street and going north. That got completed, and then the construction has now begun on the parking garage. This year, we know that there's still some design work, but then design and construction will begin on North Manhattan Avenue, Bluemont to Fremont. In 2022, we do expect the construction to be complete on the garage in North Manhattan Avenue. Right now, we're looking to begin construction on 12th Street, Morrow to Laramie, or Morrow to Fremont. We're still working on that one. Laramie Street will get some work between 12th Street and North Manhattan Avenue, and then possibly begin a new project at 12th and Laramie. That's probably much later in the year. 2023, we're looking at possibly Morrow reconstruction at that time. 2024, a little less. This is the timeline we had a couple of months ago, so it could be outdated by now. Without 2024, it would be a little less, just a traffic signal. In 2025 through 2027, that's when we get into work on the alleys, the Laramie Street completion, and then trees and monuments to finish off that whole look for Aggieville. We do a considerable number of events, and if you look up there in that March, April, May, June timeframe, we've already added 2 events this year that we've never had before, and that was the Aggieville Showdown, and that was the cattle drive down Morrow Street. That was a really good event, and it drew a good number of people. It attracted a whole lot of different people into Aggieville, and they have made a commitment to come back, and they want to do that again next year and make this an annual event. Here a couple of weekends ago, we also did the high school reunion, and that is, we intend that to be an annual event, and what we're trying to do is bring people into town. We're trying to give them a reason to come back to Manhattan, and whether we hope that they do a lot in Aggieville, but we're hoping that they fill every hotel and they hit every restaurant in town and shop. We're after everybody. The rest of these events between Homecoming Parade, Trick or Treat, and Little Apple New Year's, these are all the same things we've done, and we hope to be able to continue those this year to finish it out. We do some events that we tie in with some independent groups. Sometimes we get contacted by the chamber that they've got a group that comes in and they want to do an event. And we work with them on doing either pub crawls or Olympics. And again, it helps sell Manhattan. And I think that's a good thing for everybody. Our objectives for 2022 is obviously we're involved in this parking plan, more work, living opportunities, cleanliness, and added value to the community. Talking about the parking plan, that is the artist renderings of the new parking garage that if you haven't driven down in Aggieville in the last 2 days, it changes dramatically about every time you drive by. You know, that whole stairwell is up. You're seeing a lot of that front already. It's got a long way to go, but structurally, it really is changing some things down there. It's going to really help us out. We're working pretty hard. We have a cleaning guy that comes down 5 nights a week, and we're working to maintain the look all we can. Flower baskets, some of that stuff that we pay for, some of that is city around some of the parking lots. And again, we're just trying to keep doing community projects that favorably impact the city. That's where we are in Aggieville. And I appreciate your time, and hopefully we keep this going. I'd stand for any questions.
Yeah, I think it's working out great, especially that reunion. I think it's gonna help with transient guest tax and filling the hotels. I wandered through there during the weekend around that, and it seemed to be a pretty good little project. And I think a lot of people will be happy. Your list doesn't include Fake Patty's Day. That maybe that's a good thing.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Permanently gone away.
Well, that's right, it doesn't.
And we'll
it doesn't-
replace it with some more family-friendly events. So I think things are heading in the right direction there.
Thank you very much.
Dennis, I wanted to say, I think it's great that none of the businesses, you didn't lose any businesses during 2020, and hopefully the federal funds have helped, and hopefully there's more in the American Rescue Plan, because what we want to do is make sure we have all of those businesses not only up and running, but creating more jobs. And that's the indicator with the parking garage. I'm excited to see where that's going to take us, along with the new hotel, the parking garage, and all the stuff that's going on to make it more vibrant than what it already is, and hopefully have more and more activities. Also, I look forward to see what the New Year's Eve looks like. It's been off and on, and sometimes
Yeah.
the ball doesn't really come down, so we'll see what happens this year. But I appreciate all the work you're doing down there.
Yeah, that will be, that project will start next month. I'll start thinking about that one, try to figure out how we're going to do it this year. But we will do it.
Okay, is there any public comment? Okay, seeing none, thanks, Dennis, and, drive on with the projects down there so we can bring in people to spend money.
Next, we'll have Downtown Manhattan, Inc. Good, this looks good.
I have to have my person with me to click or,
This right there.
yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just scrolling. Hi. Thank you for having me this evening. This is my new administrative assistant, Audra Shank. She comes here from Branson, Missouri, and I have to have her doing this, or we'll be here for 30 minutes while I go off on a tangent talking about how awesome downtown is. So she's keeping me on track this evening. This is my favorite time of the year because I feel like it's a time when we get to really talk about the things that we've accomplished from June of 2020 to June of 21. And it's also a time when, bear with me, 10 years ago I started this little tradition where I like to sort of give praise to a city employee that has really gone above and beyond to help downtown. And it's very difficult every year, believe it or not, to find. I mean, there's a lot of really awesome city employees.
This year, Richard really stood out as a person who has helped us when we were going through so many changes with the pandemic that caused us to kind of change up our parking a little bit and create some temporary parking. And we took away some parking with our dining platforms. So Richard was super, super helpful and very communicative, and just always letting me know what impact was going to happen with parking or impact was going to happen with traffic. So that's makes it easy for me, so I can relay it to all 380 of our businesses. So it's just I really want to thank him for everything that he's done and recognize him as a really awesome supervisor for Public Works. And I hope that, I don't see Rob here, but I hope that somebody will pass that along to him, that we really appreciate him and his team. So despite the hardships of last year, we still had growth in a lot of areas, and we really did keep a steady balance going along in downtown. We maintained our average of new business openings with a net gain of 12 new businesses that opened, and that's really about our average. We're sometimes 10, sometimes 15, but right there, 12 new businesses opened during the pandemic, which is amazing to me. Really, the bigger indicator of our health was that we had 4 total building renovations and 1 business expansion and many facade improvements, all going on in 2020. You saw nothing but construction. I mean, that was probably the biggest thing that we had to deal with downtown, was just trying to figure out how the impacts of these various construction projects were impacting the parking that is available in the core downtown, and communicating with all these various construction companies. So it was an excellent problem to have. Our occupancy levels are down just slightly from 2019, but really that's due to an increase in our inventory. We gained office space with Community House and with a few other buildings in their renovations. So I am really confident that we will be back up to 98% in both of those categories this year. While we are certainly not Walmart, we do contribute millions of dollars annually in sales and property tax. Downtown has been showing an increase in sales tax month after month of this year, including February and March. Even during the cold shutdown, when we had those 2 weeks of freezing cold weather, we were still ringing those cash registers. And some of our businesses are reporting actually best ever numbers, not just best ever since the pandemic, but best ever in April, May, and June. Normally at this time of the year, I am excitedly telling you about all of the new jobs that had been created over the year. Unfortunately, that is not the case this year. The area that we've really been hit just really hard is in job vacancies. We have, while we have 3,500 people working within the legal boundary of the downtown district, 40% of our businesses report that they have been seeking employees since at least March. And that's not just restaurants, that's engineering firms and attorneys, it's retail businesses. We have one retailer downtown that is actually having to close her store 4 days a week now, and not for demand, but because she simply doesn't have even one person to work and keep that store open. So this is our hurdle right now. This is our biggest challenge, is is finding employees. On the upside, our May annual survey of businesses has indicated that we have very clearly begun economic recovery. 85% of our downtown businesses are reporting that they are experiencing active recovery, and that is defined as a sustained period of improved business activity. So this is really great news. One of the interesting statistics that came out of our May survey, I thought it was sort of interesting, was that 25% of our non-retail businesses, also not restaurants, had reported that they had gone remote in 2020 at some point, and they'd stayed that way for more than 6 months. They're now reporting, at least 10% of them are reporting that they will have one or more position that will remain in that work from home remote position. I don't know yet how this is going to impact office space downtown. I'm not sure yet about the full scope of this, but I'm definitely paying close attention to it because I don't want it to have an adverse effect on our property owners. And then, of course, 10 outdoor dining spaces were created as part of our open air recovery initiative early in 2020. What you're going to see next, I hope that you've had time to check this out when you were reviewing tonight's packet. This is just the official record of business activity to date. This just shows you the new businesses, the closed or moved out of the district businesses, are businesses that have expanded, and renovations that have taken place in our district. We keep this every year so that it's a constantly changing list, but it gives you a good idea of how we got that net gain of 12 new businesses. Like outdoor dining, we spent the year working on initiatives that would help us stay balanced and that would position ourselves to come into a future that we're really kind of unsure about. We work to help businesses emerge as intact as possible with assistance in understanding the various recovery and emergency funding processes. We helped businesses with their social media and e-commerce sites, and we developed partnerships that we felt would enhance our district during the pandemic and beyond. One of the best partnerships that we created was with the Manhattan Public Library and the Downtown Story Walk. That has been just absolutely embraced by our young families. They come around, they stroll, they read the book that goes from business window to business window, and they're really seeing, we're hoping, a youth activity, a community-wide activity, but also an activity that gets them down and walking in our district and sort of sensing the vibe of downtown and maybe seeing businesses that they hadn't seen before. So I'm really pleased to be working with the Manhattan Public Library. This next slide that you are going to see is the roster for our Downtown Vision Planning Committee. This committee has been working sort of on the same timeline as the Crossroads MHK. We established this committee to look at the needs of our growing district. We never want to stay static. We always want to be trying to pay attention to the needs of our patrons. They talk to us all the time about what they need and want to see in the downtown district. And so we try to address that about every 10 years or so. This committee here is made up all of downtown stakeholders. They have come up with some very easy to do. I mean, I'll be honest, I was very surprised. I thought this was going to be things like parking garage and, just all these really big ticket items, and they really weren't, which was sort of indicative of the idea that we're to a place currently that is very satisfactory for a lot of our stakeholders in downtown. We would like some enhancements. We would like some safety features getting from the alleys onto Poyntz Avenue. It can be pretty scary, especially if you are walking alone. So just when you have time, please, if you would look at this list and just sort of consider what this group is working on. I think to sum it up best, they are looking at public spaces in downtown where they can gather and participate in events where there are more trees and less cars. That sort of sums it up. And then this just covers our events that we have going on. We do 17 events on average. 5 of those, or 4 this year, would be Thursdays. And this year we are working on 3 new events. So we're pretty excited about having everybody come back down. We are in the middle of conducting a public survey right now, and it's very indicative of people in the community, our patrons, wanting, and even outside of our community, it really has quite a regional draw, are really looking forward to coming back downtown, participating in these events, spending money, shopping, dining, checking out craft beer and craft cocktails, really what downtown does best. We're really at about 85% of people that are really ready to go, and then another 15% or so of the folks that are cautiously optimistic. They're going to go at it slowly, but they're ready to come down and sit on a platform and check out the new events that we have going on. We received in January a letter from the finance department, just sort of giving us a heads up on the shortfall that we would probably be receiving in 2021 due to the transient guest tax. As you guys know, we're funded out of the transient guest tax. And this is just a letter sort of highlighting that nobody really knows what's going to happen or when we would receive our funding. But we are in a position where we need to have our funding for 2021. We need to be made whole. It's a shortfall of $39,000 for the entire year. Those are broken down into the last two remaining payments of $19,500. And we would not be able to proceed much further than August or September without receiving the July and October payments. I wanted to let you know, sort of as an aside, we did approach the county during their annual funding process and we normally ask for $5,000 from the county. We asked for $10,000 from the county to help offset the costs of just the increases that we're experiencing from our vendors and the cost to do business now. And I was basically told right away in private that we would not be receiving that additional $5,000, that it would be going to another organization. Also want to let you know that we have applied for grants, and we usually don't qualify for those grants because we are a 501c6, not a 501c3. So it sort of eliminates us from quite a lot of the grants that are out there for downtowns. But I mention this only because I want you to know that I'm trying to find other avenues of funding. And then lastly, I just have to finish with what I feel like just has to be celebrated tonight, and that is the fact that despite the really scary and uncertain times that we all started 2020 out, and the arguing and just it was rough. It was rough. We really had some silver linings in downtown, and I am just incredibly impressed all the time by our local small business community. I mean, we had BHS and Architect One donated all of the labor and design costs to build those 9 platforms in that one sidewalk cafe. I mean, that's just mind-blowing. We've had tens of thousands of dollars in private money raised to get 3 new murals downtown by private individuals who've, taken the time to really work that and make that happen. And, as I said earlier, the 4 total building renovations and facade improvements, people are still trying to make downtown look beautiful and be welcoming. The DMI office coordinated 3 vaccine clinics for our downtown employees, and that was probably the highlight of my year. To be a part of that just felt really, really amazing. And I have to really shout out Barry's Drugstore because they took that bull by the horns and they made it available time and time again to each phase of individual that qualified to receive their vaccine. It was really my honor to be a part of that. And we were able to, we had record number of participants at our Pink Up the Pace breast cancer run, which meant we were able to give more money than ever before to Johnson Cancer Research Center. So it wasn't all a bad year. We had some really amazing things happen. You really saw the spirit of our community coming together, which just sort of seals the deal for me all the time with how much I love this community and downtown. And that's all I have for you. I will stand for questions if you have any.
I'll just, I think, comment that I live downtown, and the atmosphere downtown, even during the pandemic, has been noticeable. The improvements of the outdoor, just the platforms, the life, the lighting, and just the community that is coming around that's so much different than it was when I was in college here 20 years ago. So it's downtown is definitely becoming its own real fundamental part of the community in a meaningful way where people can walk around. I know we've talked about the e-scooters, the story walks, all types of things that are bringing new eyes into places, and I'm glad that you are helping coordinate that and doing what you can and looking for outside resources, but I look forward to supporting your efforts.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Hi, Gina, this is Commissioner Reddy. I don't know if you can hear me. So how are Third Thursdays going?
So our first one was rained out.
Oh, no.
And our second one was nearly wiped out with heat.
Okay.
But I was so pleased with the number of artists and patrons that came out for the one we just had. It was great to see. We had our restaurants had upwards of an hour and 20-minute wait. We had most of our sidewalks full of artists and entertainers and unique things going on. So I just feel nothing but positive moving forward. I have a great new event manager, and she's just tackling this as if it was her own. So
Very good.
yeah,
Yeah, that's what we want to see. And I know there's future talk about maybe closing the streets and having it
Yeah.
where people can just stroll. And also what you're going to do with that area in front of the mall, and see if we can get some artists or,
Yes.
concerts of some kind going on
Yes.
there as well. So I like all that
yes,
thought process going there. I know we've already visited at least 6 restaurants downtown. We enjoy going out, and we've been to plenty of restaurants within the city of Manhattan, but it's been a pleasure to go back and visit the restaurant owners and
Yeah.
also take our family members there. So I see it all coming back, and I hope the CARES money has helped a lot of our businesses. I talk to Jan Miller all the time, and she said she's doing terrific
Yep.
with Steve's Floral, as well as, is it Root?
Uh-huh.
Rooted.
Rooted.
Rooted,
Mhm.
yeah, and they're doing well.
Yes.
And I get the idea about needing more employees, so that's an ongoing mission for all of us. But I do appreciate what you're doing and the events that are going on, and I think there's going to be a lot more of it. Platforms, of course, certainly helped a lot, and I see, we've traveled a lot, and those platforms are now key to everybody. I think those are permanent now, they're not just temporary, because people really do enjoy just eating outside.
I think they've really, I've noticed in this current survey that's ongoing right now with the public that we're conducting, the platforms have really, there's been a huge paradigm shift on how people view Points Avenue and the whole, there's no parking in front of such and such building, or, I
Right.
have to circle. That's kind of gone away. You don't really hear about that. It's very interesting. People are much more aware of the fact that it's okay to park in the mall parking lot and then walk to AJ's Pizzeria or then walk to Steve's Floral. It's really been interesting to see, and I think we are moving in a different direction than we didn't even think 10 years ago that we would be approaching this.
Right, we adapt well.
We do.
And I think we adapt well because we know it's exciting.
Yeah.
If it was just dull and boring and there was no place to go, why do you have all of this? But it's exciting, so just a 2 or 3, 5-minute walk does not seem that terrible. So I'm glad it's going well.
Yes.
Thank you.
It really is. Thank you for the comments. I appreciate it.
There was 2 things I just wanted to acknowledge, I guess, is one is the Barry's Drug has really stepped up and maybe in a under-recognized way in delivering vaccines in the community to vulnerable populations all across the downtown area and the community, and just really important work that they did over the last year. So I'm glad you
Yes.
acknowledged that.
Oh, Dr. Parson is the most humble man, and he just wants to get shots in arms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other part, I guess, is the public art. What a great along Third Street.
Yep.
when everything was closed, we still got out and walked and looked at all those sculptures all the way down to the Discovery Center and back, and that was something to do when there was nothing else to do.
Yep.
But it still was there and very cool. And then the murals, of course, with Inside MHK, and it's quite the change in the last year.
Yeah.
It's really good.
I think too, it's going to be really important for DMI going forward to have really solid relationships with Insight MHK and also with the city as they move forward with a public art platform. We've noticed an increase in inquiries at the very minimum that when are those sculptures going to change over, and what are the guidelines and sort of how do they fall into the city's guidelines. So it's a burgeoning thing in downtown, and we are going to grasp it and run with it and just take that as our own for sure.
I would just like to echo what you've heard tonight. I'm pleased with the work. I know it requires a lot of energy, and I appreciate the new things you're trying.
Thank you.
And I think they've worked well and been very successful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I want to just mention that I think, the business districts, both DMI and Aggieville, are really central to economic recovery because, that's where our sales tax is generated, property tax down there also. And the various things that both of those groups do are absolutely vital. And for that reason, I'm convinced we need to make up any shortfalls in funding for 2021, as Gina mentioned. It's absolutely vital to keep both flowing, and of course, fully for 2022. And I think we're getting pretty good value for the amount of funds that we put in there. And one thing that I think people may not appreciate as much is, and Gina's got an ad out here, she needs a new groundskeeper. And just like everybody looking for people, you got someone that's gonna have to move on. And just simple things like groundskeeper, there's no trash downtown. The flower pots are nice, the streets cleaned up, and those kind of things are done, a lot of things like that behind the scenes. If that didn't happen, both of those areas wouldn't be very attractive. So I like to point that out. I really appreciate that, and my expectation is that, between the commission and the staff, that we fully fund both organizations, not only for next year, but this year.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any public comments on DMI? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on.
Next, we'll have the SSAB board come forward.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Marcia Horning. I'm the chair for this year's Social Services Advisory Board. I'm here with Angie Stokes, who's helped to put the presentation together and answer any questions that you all may have, since we're representing so many different organizations. We've got several members of the board here with us tonight, and also several agency representatives as well. Here's all of our pictures. All right. So tonight, we're here to make recommendations for funding for the 2022 calendar year. And just to give you a quick overview, we're looking at a recommendation of funding $449,655, across 10 organizations. And I think you're familiar with all of those organizations. That's the full amount that each of those organizations has requested. That's actually a reduction from the $477,000 from 2021 that I believe was pretty close to the same allocation from 2020. We are recommending at this time to not fund a request from one of the organizations, new organization in town called Be Able, and I'll talk through some of the reasons why we are making that recommendation here in a few minutes. Also, I want to note that the K-State Child Development Center did not apply for funds for 2022. We fully expect them to apply again in 2023. They've had some pretty significant restructuring, so just wanted to make it clear why this number looks a little bit smaller, but we do expect that to be a little bit higher again next year. So as we are looking ahead at 2023, we know that Be Able will probably approach us again with a funding request. We know the K-State Child Development Center will do the same. We've heard there are a couple of other organizations locally that may also, so you do see a decrease in our recommendation this year, but just wanted to provide a little bit of direction looking forward that may increase after this coming year. All right, oh, this wasn't in my slide deck. Okay, so here's just a historical allocation for each of these agencies. Looks like from 18 to what our recommendations are for 2022. So I assume that's in your packets. I thought it might help to just give a quick breakdown for each of the organizations. So hopefully you've had a few minutes to look over these. I'm not going to sit and read every single PowerPoint slide to you. I'll hit just some of the key facts. So you see there's a graph on every page that kind of shows you historical requests versus allocations. So you can kind of get a trend line there for each of the organizations. The right-hand upper side, we provided just some general information about what that organization does. The middle of the slide shows specifically what any city dollars are funding. Sometimes that's for a particular project or program within the organization. And then finally, the key metrics are on the lower right-hand side of that slide. Will you go back to Crisis Center real quick? Maybe. How do you go back? Oh, maybe. All right. Yep. Thank you. Okay. So as far as the Crisis Center, again, we're recommending the full allocation for each of these 10 organizations. So they requested $48,800. That is flat. That's not an increase. Most of these are not an increase over previous years. There's a couple that just ask for a little bit more. You'll see that if you look at those trend lines, a lot of these organizations have really remained flat for a long time. And I do want to be clear, that's not because we're meeting their needs fully. You know, every time we've talked with any of these organizations, they've said, if we had more funding, of course, there's so many more needs that we could meet. But it's a little tricky with our allocation requests, since we don't have a specific dollar amount. We also don't want to ask for too much and too big of a jump. So it's a kind of a balancing act each year with the SSAB. So Kansas Legal Services requested $40,000. Again, that's flat from their 2021 funding. For Manhattan Emergency Shelter, again, we're flat with $86,000, and I believe that's a typo. It should be $86,768. And you can also see on some of these slides, they're pretty small, typically in terms of percent of the operating budget. So as Shepherd's Crossing, they ask for, this is a slight increase of about $5,000 over the allocation from last year. Last year they received $50,000. This year we recommend $55,000. I do want to note on that first bullet point, you'll see that 30% of the clients who came to Shepherd's Crossing for assistance this year were new clients. They indicated to us that they don't expect that trend to change. So they think they're seeing significant new needs, which is, again, across the board is what we're finding from just about every single organization. For Sunflower Casa, again, this is a flat amount, $56,000, 16% of their operating budget. And then Big Brothers, Big Sisters, this is a slight increase. Last year they received $30,000 and we're recommending $37,000. We could point to several different reasons. I will say that they are really doing a great job making new matches, and that's very time intensive when we work one-on-one with children that are at high risk in the Manhattan community. They've been investing heavily in staff in our area, have a new director who's, I think, here with us tonight, doing a fantastic job partnering with other organizations. So we're excited to hopefully be able to increase funding for their organization just a little bit to help make some new matches, both with individuals and at the sites at schools moving forward. For Boys and Girls Club, we are recommending same amount as they received last year, $45,865, which is 3% of their budget. And all of these, I could give you so many notes about the last year and all of the things that they've done. I will say for Boys and Girls Club in particular, they greatly expanded their services so that kids who were remote or in a hybrid format had a safe place to go that was staffed if parents were at work. So I just want to really note and commend them for the work that they've done in the past year. For home care and hospice, this is another one that has just a slight increase, hopefully over last year, that we're recommending. Last year they received $50,000, $50,812. I do want to note with home care and hospice, this funds their home care attendant program, and just to reiterate, they're the only local nonprofit hospice and home care provider in our community and have been here with us for now 40 years. So they provide services that no other organization does, that only accepts private pay here locally. All right, and then Morningstar asked for $12,000, and we recommend that amount. They've received about that same amount for the past several years. I'll note that they recently moved and has definitely caused some challenges as far as having access to transportation. It's a little bit off the beaten path, so this definitely has had, as we noted, some impacts on folks staying in mental health recovery. So they're working really hard to get sufficient transportation for folks to be able to utilize services at that new location, and that's the majority of the funding that they're asking for is going to fund that. For Thrive, this is a flat ask as well, so for $14,000, that's been about their same amount that they've asked for each year. I'll note that we said 75% of clients will decrease reliance on social service agencies as a result of this program. They're doing some remarkable work. It's on a small scale, but making a huge impact in terms of poverty reduction in our community. All right, and then as far as Be Able, so I think they're doing important work in the community, absolutely, and that was not a reason for not making a recommendation for funding. So many of you probably are somewhat familiar with them. They were established in 2020, so really new local agency. They requested $45,000 from SSAB, which at that point in time was about 25% of their budget, which is pretty far out of line with if you look at percentages of funding for each organization, that's a pretty huge amount, particularly for a new organization. As we did site visits for every single organization twice, also did public hearings and visited Be Able and had some questions just on the budget in general. Some pieces were a little bit unclear to us. So we asked for a revision, and we didn't receive that before the public hearing. So I haven't seen an updated budget for the organization. And when we've asked about measurable metrics for success, it's been a little fuzzy for us to be able to determine exactly how each dollar would be spent. So in terms of investment from the city at this point, we weren't sure that we could absolutely say with certainty that we knew how each dollar was being spent. So as a city board, we felt like at this point in time, we need to wait and hopefully let them get a little bit more established in this next year as they kind of determine their specific purpose and footing and fit within the community. So again, I want to clarify, not that we don't think they're doing valuable work, but just where they're at this point in time, we weren't super comfortable with making that recommendation. All right, the other one, this one's a little complicated, and we need some guidance from all of you. So in, 2020, K-State Child Development Center was funded in the amount of $43,432. Due to COVID, like many child care centers, they had to shut down for a significant period of time. So they returned just over $30,000 to us. That money has been received by the city. They sent a check back. We asked them if there was other ways that they needed to spend that money, and at that point they were starting that reorganization and just felt like it would be better to return those funds. So with that being said, I had written a letter to the commission. I believe it's in your packet, and we received guidance that we should ask you all about use of those funds. So $30,000 was returned. There are certainly needs this year. If we were able to retain that funding, we could, potentially visit with agencies this year about filling in some gaps that they might need, or if you might consider letting us retain it and using that money towards next year's allocations. We'd love for you to consider that. So I'll keep going, finish up, and then maybe we can talk for just a minute about what that could look like. Again, they did not request funding for 2022. That's where this gets a little fuzzy, but we think they will definitely, they've indicated in 2023, ask for funding again. They've merged with a couple of other K-State agent organizations, I guess, and so kind of during that transition, they felt like they weren't quite ready to put a grant request together. So again, you all know that childcare in Manhattan is a significant need, particularly affordable and quality childcare. So definitely something I want to be on the radar moving forward. So with that, as we look forward to 2023, again, just to reiterate, we're asking for a little bit this year, recommending a little bit less, but we fully expect an increase next year. So just so you kind of know what that could look like. So with that, we can take questions, and I would love for your thoughts on that $30,000.
Yeah, just one question, because maybe it should be included in the briefing.
Sure.
We do have the donations through the water department, and it might not be a significant amount, but how much has that been this year, and how are you planning on allocating that?
Rena, I don't think what's that? Can you answer that question, Rena? I don't have that in front of me.
That's fine.
Because in the past, you've targeted that to projects that just don't seem to fit in other categories, and I think one of the previous, chairs set that up that way, and I think that's a good plan. But and I also like to use the opportunity to just highlight that for those of you out there, watching. The city set this up years ago, and you can add $1, $2, whatever you want to your water bill, and finance department collects it, and 100% of it, there's no overhead, goes to Social Services Advisory Board. And, we've got over 15,000 water meters in the city. So if everybody just kicked in $1, it would be significant and really help out the board.
So in terms of our 2020 allocations, just for, and let me get that for you real quick. We have $4,446 that came in to the general fund, and we transfer it out to a project account, and those funds are accumulated, and the board reviews applications from the various agencies on an annual basis regarding their capital needs. So anywhere from repairs to vehicles that some of the agencies have, to refrigerators, things like that. So they have a time frame to submit that application. The board reviews it, then they approve, and if it's approved, then they have a certain time frame to actually submit their reimbursement request. So they have to pay for it, and then we will reimburse them.
Okay, so the fund's just got a little over $4,000 in it at this point?
No, so in terms of the actual funds in the project, let me get that information. It's not the most easy thing to navigate through.
So I think we got a sign for you all, right? Got a sign for Morningstar, so you can see where that new location is. We've bought some furniture, so you're right, it's kind of those projects that don't fit in with one of the larger funding requests, but yeah, we do review those on an annual basis, and I'd be happy to, Arena and I can provide
So the
details.
current balance in the project is $41,295. So if the agencies do not actually turn in their reimbursement, then those funds roll over for the next year, and then they're reallocated based on request.
Okay,
And so-
that's a good amount. That's $41,000, and I don't know if that's been highlighted, to the agencies, because I think we've used it for things like some kitchen equipment and some
Yes.
other odds and ends, out there that just don't fit in the normal category.
And I believe several of those projects are happening right now and just haven't been reimbursed yet, so that balance
Boys
isn't
Club,
quite
Girls
as high.
Club used it
Okay,
for
so-
security system.
So excellent. And those of you out there that don't donate on the water bill, please consider doing so.
Absolutely, thank you.
I have a question about the Be Able thing. I was down there
Sure.
at their offices for an hour and a half yesterday, and obviously they're they're trying to do some great work of people that are falling through the cracks. And how do you measure success? How does the emergency shelter measure success really when you, and how do mental health people measure success with people with ongoing mental illness that aren't getting treated? It's going to be an impossible matrix trying to figure out metrics, trying to figure out what a success is going to be there. I suspect that every couple of years they'll be able to point to a success story where somebody got their life together, got off drugs, got a job, stayed clean for a year, and then joined the staff probably. And so that may be how they measure success, is how many staff members they can create. And so, and I know that they're gonna need a pile of money for their renovation of their building when they get those plans together. And so, if you ever end up talking to anybody down there sometime, you might ask them to maybe try to apply for that. That's something measurable, tangible, something that would be a return on investment by the city. I think that would make some difference. But yeah, I don't know. At least they've got an active board. They're making progress. Everybody's trying to do a all hands on deck thing as much as they can, and I think it's a great program. And once the community understands it more and better, I think there'll be a lot more wide community support, and to the point where, yeah, it won't be 25% of their budget when they ask for some money. Hopefully it will start being quite a bit less once it's understood and people know they exist and understand what they're trying to do. So, yeah.
I absolutely agree with you. Thank you for those comments.
And I think all of the programs that you've recommended to be recipients of this are long established. I mean, we have this chart with how much they've received for the last 7, 8 years. And I think it's really difficult to start up a program like that. And I know they're working with just a number of people in the community to bring it together and make it. And then in the middle of that, they have to move. So getting to another location and now having to fuss with improvements there. So I support Be Able. I don't know. I appreciate the evaluation that you've done. And, there have been applicants in the past that have not been successful, and some of them don't exist anymore, some of those. So, I really appreciate what you put into it, the interviews you do, this is very well done year after year. And anyway.
This is Commissioner Reddy. I think, thank you. I know you make a lot of visits and make phone calls. This is a very time-consuming job, volunteer position that you've all signed up for, but it's very valuable to us when we make our decisions. It's also good to know the COVID funding that some of them received and some of them that didn't, and for a variety of reasons, I'm sure. I think, speaking to Be Able, I think in that 1 year, just in that pandemic year, they've made a great impact on all of us. And I think they've literally saved lives with homeless. And I know your task was very hard. Your task was extremely hard. And that's why you make the recommendations you do. And I think I accept all of them. I do suggest maybe the $30,000 that the Child Care Center returned probably be put into Be Able. I think that's a good way if the commission wants to have that discussion. I would certainly approve it, mainly because they've already made a name for themselves in such a short span because they're boots on the ground. They're all hands on deck all the time. And when bad weather hit, they really did take on a lot of burden that other organizations that are so organized but couldn't do it. And they got them into hotels and gave them a bed to sleep in and such. So that's just something I'd like for us to consider. But you've done really a great job in presenting, and especially the trends for each of those years. Because I see some of them stayed the same, some have asked for less, some have asked for more. But because of them, our community residents are doing well during that pandemic year. So I think thank you once again for all the work you all have done.
Thank you. And I
Thank
do
you.
want to reiterate again, sometimes when organizations ask for less money, it may have been because the previous year, they didn't receive what they asked for, and so they thought this is probably the maximum amount that we might be able to receive. So, again, just to be clear that does not in any way mean that we're fulfilling all of the needs in the community. We know, unfortunately, that's not the case.
Oh, I was gonna add, my 2 cents on the extra money from the K-State Child Care Center would be to either roll it into next year, since there's gonna be a lot more expense needed most likely, or I would be supportive of if Be-Able gets their plans together and has a target number and they've got some other money raised, we could maybe throw it into their renovation fund there.
Great.
Yeah, I think did an excellent briefing. I like the design of those slides because it cuts right to the chase. And I want to thank the, Social Service Advisory Board. Out of all the city boards, this one requires probably the most work. I mean, there at least a lot of work, that's for sure, to go around and do 2 site visits. And you also have been doing an excellent job over the past few years of, not going crazy on budget. Because on a situation like this, it's very easy to just spend unlimited funds. Because the need is always gonna exceed the amount of money that's present. And so I appreciate, the hard-nosed look at what's there and making some tough decisions. Because this could become a spending nightmare, relatively easy. And so I appreciate that constraint, and I think the key metrics you put there really hones in on it, because it holds people's feet to the fire on what we're doing. And I think we're getting a good return on it. And as for the $30,000 left over, I agree with Commissioner Reddy and Mark Hattasol that for sure the money should go back into social services. And maybe you should consider looking at Be-Able. I spent some time down there at least twice the past few months. And I do think they're maybe hitting a segment of the population that neither of the other agencies are really dealing with. And so I think, their vision and what they're trying to accomplish is good, but I'd have trouble articulating it also into a metric. And so that's the challenge there, but I appreciate your recommendation on that.
Thank you.
I was rather try to keep the money in the programming side than in a physical building. I'd rather not get into construction at all of these different agencies, but we're contributing money and they're using it the best way they can, and sometimes I'm not sure how we monitor that or if we even do.
All the current money in the budget is not for building fund except for the water department money that he's referring to, and that is for capital request. Like they were saying, signs and bus repairs, and Boys and Girls Club put a security system in. I know some people have done water and building repairs, but that has to be requested and comes through the other money outside of this. The money that's provided in this specific budget is for a program, and is highlighted on that one area. We kind of broke it down and highlighted the exact money and what it was being spent for.
Thank you.
I have a couple of, 3 questions. One is specific to as you quickly went through the slides, CASA, this 91% number jumped out. What the heck
Yes.
happened there?
It was a significant jump. I think they could probably point to, I was gonna say, are they here? I can't remember. James could probably speak.
There was I think I read it quickly, there was a 91% increase in the quarter of childcare services of our needs.
Yeah, I'll let the expert answer. I could give you the summary.
Jamie
but-
Morris Hardiman, I'm back to working at CASA in addition to Thrive, so I'll talk about that as well. There was a huge increase in the number of child need of care cases filed. So last year they filed 64 cases for the entire year. This year they've already filed 70 cases as of today. So the number of cases coming to the system has gone through the roof this year, which I think a lot of that was last year when kids were home. Who's reporting? Right? When kids aren't at school and those eyes aren't on those kids, who's making the reports? So certainly a significant increase, which means we need more volunteers. So since I'm up here, I'm going to use my microphone to put in the plug. We need advocates. We've got 24 kids on our waiting list right now. So please, please, please be a CASA volunteer.
So can you, just a couple slides forward, I just wanted to get a chance to, right.
Go back 2. There you go.
91% increase in child needs, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, huge increase in the
First
number of
quarter.
cases filed.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Thanks for the opportunity.
The other, of course, it's interesting to me to hear about this money that is maybe for capital needs through, and of course the commission and I don't know if the public has been rallied in a way. There's needs to address a food desert in Northview, and Eisenhower Community Center being identified as one of those places where there could be kitchen equipment needs. And I don't know if that's risen to the level of the Social Services Advisory Board, but that certainly got my attention as you talked about capital needs and the dollar amounts that exist there, and maybe those organizations can make a request through that process as well.
Brandon, does it have to be one of the 10
Yeah,
agencies?
We need to
Yeah.
get to public comments, and we did have 4 people sign up
Okay.
in advance to
So
speak
the
about
answer,
this.
it has to be one of the 10 services.
Okay.
It's those needs that are met through the water bill for the 10 agencies.
It has to be one of the 10. Okay.
Yep, that's correct. So we have at least 4, looks like, 5 speakers tonight that
Okay.
want to address this, and we'll start with Andrew Elliott, if you're still here.
Mayor Butler, we actually have several people that are going to be commenting on this exact topic, and we have a pretty structured, intentional series of things to share with you. So we would ask the courtesy of both you and the commissioners to allow us to speak in that prepared order.
Okay, we do have some time limits on speaking and things like that, so.
Sure, it's syntactic though. There's a logical order of the things you'll be hearing.
Okay.
It may be the most efficient use of everyone's time tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. My name is Doug Benson, 233 Harvey Drive in the Dix edition of Northview, from the Northview Rising Neighborhood Group. My family and I have lived in the same address for 41 years and have enjoyed our neighborhood and our neighbors greatly during this time. However, we've always questioned why Northview, with its over 7,000 residents, has no secular civic indoor space for meetings and other types of gatherings and events, no restaurants, no bars, no library, no civic spaces. Our schools are no longer available to us due to security restrictions. We've been restricted to meeting in each other's homes and parks and streets, and for a while at the Vineyard Community Church. We've made these spaces work, but they're not always available. They're not always feasible nor ideal. Imagine our delight then when our Parks and Recreation Department began planning a recreation center near Eisenhower Middle School in 2018. Finally, we thought this situation could be rectified. I cannot take credit for the original idea that was largely conceived by Eileen Wan, who was a curator for the Beach Museum at K-State and a Northview resident. A place for social, cultural, artistic, educational, and physical and mental health related outreach to our community, but especially a place where we could address issues of food insecurity and health equity, food distribution, vaccination clinics, nutrition education, cooking classes. Out of these ideas came a list of uses and benefits to the Northview neighborhood, with some ideas for Manhattan community partners who could help make that happen. In September of 2018, at the second meeting of the steering committee for the 2 recreation centers, members of what was then the Greater Northview Action Team, some of us who were on the steering committee and others who were not, presented a proposal that would expand the Eisenhower Center into a true community center. These ideas were met enthusiastically by architect Tracy Anderson, who requested a copy of our talking points, and Parks and Recreation Assistant Director Wyatt Thompson both mentioned that this was exactly the kind of community input that they were hoping to receive. By December of 2018, the 2018 meeting of the steering committee then, planners had redesigned the 2 buildings to include a second story with a walking running track, a multi-purpose technology room, and a framed-in kitchen. We were greatly encouraged. But then came a double setback. Number 1, there was not enough money left in the budget for the kitchen equipment itself, and due to code restrictions, The kitchen could not be just a basic kitchen, but had to be a commercial one with an industrial exhaust hood and at an estimated cost of $50,000. Despite these decisions by the city, the needs of the Northview community have not changed. It is clearly unreasonable and inequitable to expect the residents of Northview, who live in one of the most economically marginalized parts of Manhattan and who are already paying taxes for the construction of the center, to take on this funding project ourselves. The Commission has previously stated its desire to create 2 equal centers, but that does not take into account the fact that the Anthony Center is located in a much more affluent part of town with many more resources and far better access to meeting spaces. Equal is not the same as equitable. Northview desperately needs a truly accessible, usable, and welcoming community center, and as we have pointed out regularly in communications with the city manager's office, the pandemic has only exacerbated the needs of our neighborhood. The solution then lies with you, with the City Commission itself now, by identifying a funding source for the build-out of the Eisenhower Community Center kitchen in this budget cycle. Thank you very much.
Hello, I am Patricia Satterley, and I live at 1915 Lilac Lane in the Northview area. And I just wanted to speak a little bit about, I came from a small community in central Kansas, and a series of events caused them to have to build an activity center in their community. It has far more opportunities and spaces than we're going to have at this Eisenhower community. But one thing that they do have, in addition to a concession stand, is a kitchen. And in that kitchen space, and I know part of the reason for adding these centers in these communities is to add the gyms, to be able to host tournaments, to bring business, other, that tournament to town, so we have more visitors to town, which is going to be wonderful. But there's also opportunities then for local agencies, clubs, organizations. If you have a kitchen in addition to having just a regular concession stand, they can do their own fundraisers. You know, maybe if it's a basketball tournament, you can have the baseball team doing sloppy joes and those kinds of things. And you really wouldn't maybe be able to do some of that if you just had a concession stand without having that kitchen experience. We also use that kitchen in that local activity center for weddings, funerals, all those different kinds of things that people could rent that space for that maybe would be more conducive to a smaller arena versus some of the other things that are available, something close to those people who live in that Northview neighborhood. And I did bring with me today, and I'll leave it just for review. I don't know where you guys are at on fee schedules for those kinds of things, for renting the rooms and whatnot, but they have it listed on here what they're charging. So if you were gonna rent a meeting room, they're only charging you $10 per hour. If you were gonna rent the kitchen, it was $10 per hour. And then they have some other requirements and things on there. But what I wanted to say in addition was that activity center really was the hub of that community. Like, a lot of things happened there. It wasn't just sports. It was people who would come to give presentations. It would be like the senators coming to talk. It would be the high school doing programming there. It would be the extension office. It would be the health department. It would be the hospital offering things there. So it really was the hub of the community. I could really see that happening in Northview. If we were able to expand that, it would be used and people could take advantage of that. And the idea of just adding that would contribute to the well-being of the community. You know, giving people opportunity to get to someplace close to them to be able to do and learn and grow in those experiences. I think you'd be surprised how much different it would make that area, that people really would come there, and it would be a huge benefit. The other thing, on this fee schedule, it talks about if you're a nonprofit. And I called them today just to clarify because I was pretty sure that this was the way it went. But if you're a nonprofit organization and you're going to provide an event or an activity at the community center, they didn't charge you any of these fees to be able to do that because it was a benefit for the community. And you have staff there anyway, but there are some rules to that, like you have to clean up your own mess. If you're gonna come there and use the facility, you're responsible for making sure it's as good as when you left it. And so I'm hopeful and excited that we can get those things in place, and it'll be exciting to see it come alive and really be a hub for that Northview community. So I'll just leave this here, and if you guys wanted to share, you don't have to recreate the wheel maybe in that experience. So thank you.
Yeah, I want to interject, the public comment was supposed to be about Social Services Advisory Board, and the topic you're talking about has nothing to do with the Social Services Advisory Board.
I
So it's-
respectfully disagree in the capacity.
Well, but the point is, that's what it was. So what I've done is, my assumption was you were all gonna talk about Social Service Advisory Board, and you're not talking about that. So what I wanna do is terminate the public comment on this until the end of the meeting. You will be able to finish, but we wanna put it in the right context because, our next topic was supposed to be special alcohol funds, which might be related. And once they're done, then we can continue with the discussion because it's gone on the direction that doesn't fit the agenda. So at this point, can we go with the Social Services, Special Alcohol Funds Committee?
This time, Chris Bailey, Vice Chair of the Special Alcohol Fund Advisory Board, will present.
Thank you very much. Chris Bailey, Vice Chair of the Social Services Advisory, Special Alcohol Funds Advisory Board. And our Chair, Jardine Coleman, is sitting in the back, and she'll correct me if I do anything wrong. This is a much different experience for me. Every time I've ever been up here before, I've been asking for something, and being on the other side of that paradigm in this context has been broadening, you might say. Special alcohol funds, unfortunately, this year had to cut every single allocation that was requested, simply because the dollars weren't there. We started out this year with about $466,000. We had requests in excess of $600,000. So they're through a process very similar to that, nigh on identical to that of the Social Services Advisory Board. We had our site visits, this time by video. We deliberated, and we had some very, very difficult decisions to make. And to the extent that we made any cuts, they are not judgments on the individual value that we individually and collectively attribute to the people requesting the money. It just came down to we had difficult decisions to make. And if I knew how to work this, so the money we are recommending, the money that you have, that you are, we hope you will accept our recommendations for the distribution of, are funds designated by state statute to provide for and assist in alcohol and drug abuse prevention, intervention, treatment programs and services. So this is our board, some of whom have joined us this evening. And our funding priorities are prevention, education, treatment, and intervention. And so we had overall, our recommendations are a 1.1% decrease from the total funding approved last year. We're allocating, in our recommendation, we're allocating all of the money that the city anticipates being available. In the past, we have retained some funds to cover potential shortfalls. This year, everybody just had to understand when they were applying for money that our recommendations were, we didn't have a cushion. So if the actual money coming in is less than anticipated, everybody's going to take that on the chin. But given the need and given the reduced amount that we had to work for, we felt like we really had to do our best to get the money out the door. We ended up with money to allocate $230,000, almost $231,000 shy of what was requested. We did have a new application this year from Be Able. We did, in fact, fund them for $10,000, down from $35,000 that they requested. We will be interested in seeing the results. They are a unique application in the community. The service they're providing is unique, and we're happy to be able to give them a chance. Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I should reiterate that a number of these applicants are similar to those from the Social Services Advisory Board, but our awards are based specifically on the drug and alcohol prevention, intervention, education, and treatment. So Big Brothers Big Sisters is 100% directed toward prevention, and they asked for $19,000. We felt able to give them $16,000, which is what we were able to give them last year. Boys and Girls Club, likewise, they are also 100% prevention. Friends of Recovery Association are the statewide outfit that operates the Oxford houses. They were very much in flux due to COVID, and we had a very, very hard decision to make. We didn't like the decision we had to make last year where they asked for 15 and we could only give them 5. This year, we felt compelled to cut them all together. We do expect to get application next year, and we certainly hope that we are able to fund them next year. KSU AODES, which is alcohol and drug prevention and education operated by Lafine Health Center. They ask for a lot of money. They provide a very valuable service to a important population in Manhattan, and they provide all 4 services: prevention, education, treatment, and intervention. We could find our way to give them $17,000. I can address why they get so much less than they ask for in a slide that's coming up here. Manhattan Emergency Shelter, we did want to fund them as fully as possible. I think that they may be asking for, the amount that they were able to get last year. But these are critical for them because they serve a very important function in interrupting the cycle of alcohol and drug addiction by being able to monitor that for the clients that they serve and serve as an incentive to stay clean. Midwest Education Center, Wonder Workshop, they applied last year. We did not give them 2021 money, but we were able to give them some money this year. They are primarily prevention and some education. These are for the youngest and most vulnerable, a la Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and Boys and Girls Club. Pawnee Mental Health, they are the community mental health center. If they don't provide these prevention, treatment, and intervention services in town, we cannot rely on anybody else to provide them. There are private providers, but those are entrepreneurial outfits, and we feel compelled to support the Community Mental Health Center in their endeavors. The Restoration Center provides education to two special populations, historically jail inmates and the Job Corps Center. And this year, due to funding constraints, as I'd already mentioned, we had to choose one. And Jardine, it was Job Corps. So we gave them the money to provide services at Job Corps. Feeling that's a younger, by and large, a younger, more vulnerable population. Raleigh County Community Corrections Adults Services, and the next slide would be Raleigh County Community Corrections Juvenile Services. The courts do not have the money to provide UAs, but using our money, they are able to provide what's basically called a 5-panel UA, which is an instant read urinalysis, which gives 5 different drugs, whether it's present, not present. If it is present, then it goes off to a lab to see if the level in question rises to something that is significant for the courts. So they do, in their services, they provide prevention, education, treatment, but mostly intervention. The emphasis is largely the same with the Riley County Community Corrections and the Juvenile Services. Raleigh County Court Services probation is 100% treatment, and what I understand that they are using this money for is helping people get to treatment and identify treatment when that is a part of their court-ordered sentencing. Sunflower Casa Project, likewise, we have some of the most vulnerable population, probably the single most vulnerable population in Manhattan, being both young, both behind the 8 ball in terms of family circumstances, and those kiddos need our support. So it's forming those relationships and having an adult who gets to know them, who has no other agenda than that child's well-being, puts them in a unique situation to help out. Thrive. Thrive is asking for $10,000. We would like to recommend $10,000. And that supports the youth programming for effectively the child care for the families who are going through the Thrive program. Without that, a lot of those families would not be able to participate in the Thrive program. So we feel that this is building on something, a good thing that is already in place, and making it more available. The UFM, University, formerly known as University for Man or Mankind, Teen Mentoring Program, is taking at-risk youth who are not able to take advantage of other programs, either due to special needs or because they've disqualified themselves in some way, and providing them with socialization skills, something to do besides get into trouble, and steer them away from the easy out of pursuing substances. USD 383. it's 70% prevention, 30% intervention. What we're funding here largely is the social workers that they can have at every site. And having that staff there, trained, able to recognize the signs, able to steer people toward treatment, able to provide some services in the schools. We very much wanted to fund that to the greatest extent possible because these are our kids. These are the next generation. These are our future doctors, our future college professors, our future electricians, our future med techs. And this is just a rundown of everybody who, all the requests that we had. As you can see, we had really closer to $700,000 requested. We were able to allocate about 466, just a little over 466,000. This is an allocation update from 2020. As you can see, there did end up being some money left over. We anticipate less this time around, though there may be some. And here's just the year-to-date allocation for 2021. And thank you very much for your attention. We didn't, as I said, we did not take any of these decisions lightly. These are excruciating choices to have to make. It's like choosing between different children. Every one of these outfits has something to contribute to the community, and we only regret that we couldn't do more. Just in general, you know, this money comes from liquor by the drink, comes from alcohol that you buy at a bar. And thanks to COVID, there weren't as many people drinking. And thanks to prices and laws and things like that, there's the general trend is for people to be pre-gaming at home before hitting Aggieville. So this source of funding is probably, you know, with blips here and there, going to be decreasing over time. So I'm happy to take any questions.
I think excellent briefing, and especially your conclusion there to let everybody know, you know, where this money comes from, because it's not, you know, general tax dollars, property tax dollars, whatever's collected on, you know, drinks. And I think that maybe there was not a reduction in drinking in COVID, it just wasn't in our bars because they were closed. But hopefully, as we get the recovery going and different events take place, that you'll be able to have more money in next year's budget. I think you made a wise choice to spend what's available, because it doesn't do you any good to sandbag it. That's not going to help the people out there.
Right.
So I really appreciate your work and the board's work, because you did have to make some tough decisions. You know, the budget, that was it. You had to stay within the budget. And I appreciate that, and I hope we'll have a much better outlook next year.
Me too. And if I may, I want to recognize Ms. Coleman. She made the PowerPoint presentation. I can't take any credit for that, so thank you.
This is Commissioner Reddy. I wanted to say thank you again for the presentation. I think the Alcohol Advisory Board, Special Alcohols Advisory Board, has one of the toughest decisions to make, because there's oftentimes, we've seen in recent years, the funds decrease each time. And we do try to, in the past, have some carryover. But this time, of course, you could not do that. But you know, even though we joke that they didn't go to bars and, you know, purchase drinks, they were buying alcohol. So there is this increase in substance abuse at the same time. There was a lot of discussion about how alcohol abuse has increased, substance abuse in general has increased, and just because they're doing Zoom meetings, you don't have to wait till 7 in the evening to drink. You can drink anytime. And so it was just that easy access, easy purchase, and there was just so much more stress with having to teach your children at home, or maybe a death in the family or somebody in the hospital, and there weren't many ways to cope. So I think our needs have been extraordinarily high during the pandemic. And like I said, they couldn't go to bars to purchase, but that doesn't mean substance abuse has decreased. In fact, it has increased. So thank you for your work and your recommendations.
Thank you.
I'll just make a quick note to Ms. Coleman as a current school board member, former school board member. It's frustrating that we're so limited in what we're able to do, and I recognize what you did to fund the school program, social workers, but certainly it's less than it could have been, and the need is greater than ever. So just pointed that out.
Okay, is there any public comment on the Special Alcohol Funds Committee?
Mayor, Commissioners, I would just point out, we did have a handout at your station there this evening that reflects on some of our CDBG funds that we've used as a gap filler, specifically knowing that the alcohol funds were going to be short. So we've been somewhat successful in the CDBG funds meeting some of the expectations for 2020 funding. And so a lot of those agencies from the 2020 request have been made whole or will be made whole through the CDBG allocation. We do anticipate there is some balance of the funds yet available for allocation in 21, and we anticipate there could be more CDBG funds coming that could fit some of this gap funding as well.
Yeah, I saw the chart. I saw the chart here, and that's good news, because there's still some money left there, and then we might be able to make some of these groups in better shape than they are now. So it's good to see that.
So, you might be able to increase the amounts that, of the actual awards. You might not be able to meet the requested amount.
So
Depends on the revenue as the year goes along.
it does. So right now, what they've been used is to meet what we said we'd fund them, because we were way short.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Okay, that's good news. So that ends all the items we had on the agenda. We're gonna add the rest of this discussion, since the folks are here and there's no sense delaying it till the first meeting in July, which probably would have been the right time agenda-wise to put it on there. But what we have here is actually another topic which is related to social services, and that would be to place a kitchen in the Eisenhower Rec Center, and I guess a commercial kitchen. And so we had 2 speakers already. I think there's a third one probably.
Thank you. I'm Suzanne Gleemore, and I live at 1405 Nichols Street, and tonight I do want to share my thoughts regarding the Eisenhower Community Center. Specifically, the role it can play in addressing issues like food insecurity and health equity in the Northview community, and why the Manhattan City Commission needs to identify funds in the budget currently under consideration to finish that kitchen out and equip the space in the center. Inequity is a systemic problem that Northview faces. Data and research from the Flint Hills Wellness Coalition and the Riley County Health Department make this explicitly clear in the Riley County Opportunity Map Index. Compared to other areas of Manhattan, Northview is disproportionately and negatively impacted by food insecurity, poor transportation infrastructure, and worse overall health outcomes. 100% of Northview is in a food desert, which is a result of poor overall planning. We have some of the highest rates of unaffordable housing in the state, and people in Northview die younger than people living in other neighborhoods in Manhattan, on average between 5 and 10 years earlier than people living just a few miles to the west. Publicly funded projects attempting to address community needs in Northview must begin by addressing the known problems of food scarcity in Northview and the lack of localized, equitable access to amenities that promote general health and well-being. The Eisenhower Community Center requires a functional kitchen to meet Northview's needs. And while the city committed to roughing in space for a kitchen in 2019 in response to community advocacy, it's failed to commit to securing kitchen equipment. It's left that burden of either writing grants or securing additional funding on the community. That is, the city is making an economically marginalized community pay for a project that was supposed to support that same community's interests and well-being. And this isn't a singular event. That pattern is fundamentally inequitable and unethical, and here's why. Northview has consistently been economically and politically harmed by city policies, from flood risk mitigation and land management policies to a lack of access to safe and affordable housing, to regressive and ineffective tax policies, to publicly funded projects that do not reflect the needs of all community stakeholders. All of these policies directly and disproportionately hurt economically vulnerable community members, and by ignoring these advocacy efforts, shut out important community voices. We have a petition with over 130 signatures from Manhattan residents, and I will leave that with you, taxpayers and voters. We all reject the city's lack of equitable community engagement and failure to make this publicly funded project relevant for community stakeholders. You heard earlier all the ways in which it can be relevant. These signatories support making the Eisenhower Community Center a space with the capacity to meet known community needs. That includes a fully functioning kitchen with the equipment paid for by the city, either through funding allocation or through city staff securing additional grant funding. Food insecurity touches all aspects of social services in our community and has a distinctly acute impact on Northview. Funding this equipment is a powerfully effective way for the city to begin addressing some of the core inequities that Northview experiences as a result of city planning and policies. We know that proactive community support is economically a wiser and far more effective financial investment than reactive social service. A one-time expenditure for kitchen equipment is less expensive by a lot and more effective by far in addressing ongoing needs that stem from the systemic problems I've named. It's also what the community and your voting constituency needs, and it's what we're asking for. Thank you for listening.
Can I ask a question? You have a kitchen, let's say you get a kitchen, then what? Who's gonna cook food? Who's gonna serve it? Where are you gonna get it? How does that solve a foods insecurity issue? Would it be better to get the bread basket, to put a second location? Is that, I don't understand, is it the fact that there's no grocery store in the area? First of all, let's start with how would having a kitchen available, because the city is gonna wanna charge people to use it, or because someone's gonna have to maintain it and clean it up. How will that solve food issues? And wouldn't a breadbasket second location be better, or explain to me how this is gonna solve a food insecurity issue by having a kitchen that the city provides? I haven't heard that part of the argument so far.
So I would say that there's layers and layers and layers to that. I don't think a kitchen will solve all food insecurity issues, right?
Andrew wants to answer this question, I'm thinking.
But yes, I will let him talk, and if you want me to come back.
Okay, yeah, somebody address that at some point during the presentation.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, don't count me on time for this. So I actually have 3 questions in response to that. Can everyone hear me? I have 3 really pointed questions.
We're not gonna change the rules. The rules for public comment are still timed.
Sure, I'm responding to
But also,
Commissioner
our rules for
Hattusall's.
public comment do not allow dialogue and discussion, but
So should I indulge the question or no?
you can.
I can. Is it going to come at the consequence of that?
Yes, it will. Yes, it will.
I won't answer your question then, because you're handicapping me.
Send me an email sometime.
I absolutely will. Thank you for not starting my time yet. Who was ever in charge of that? That was a good highbrow thing. Well, I'm up here now. Wow, that happened fast. Hey, my name is Andrew Elliott. I live at 2108 Prairie Lea Place. And tonight, I want to share some observations regarding the Eisenhower Community Center, obviously. Specifically, my concerns regarding city staff and officials' lack of equitable conduct in the development of this project, as well as their dismissal of issues like food insecurity and health equity in the Northview community. In that, I'm going to explain why the Manhattan City Commission needs to identify a funding source in the current budget to purchase and install kitchen equipment for the Eisenhower Center as both an ethical and financially practical solution. From inception and design all the way through to maintenance and operation, publicly funded projects like the Eisenhower Center must be equitable. That means equitable community engagement, identification of community needs that are sourced from the people that these projects are intended to serve, and amenities and services that are relevant to the health, interests, and well-being of community members. Throughout the development of these centers, none of these things have been substantively practiced by the City of Manhattan. Due to a lack of equitable community engagement, only 7 out of the 44 members of this project steering committee were from Northview. And not surprisingly, the language that was being used to describe these centers was not that of stakeholders in local projects promoting community needs. Instead, it was the language of shareholders in Manhattan's local sports tourism industry. They described these projects as spaces intended for local indoor sporting events and spaces to generate revenue through sports tourism. Northview community members don't need a recreational center that is designed around sports tourism. What Northview needs, and what we have repeatedly asked that the design of the Eisenhower Center reflect, is a community center, a public, secular space that promotes health and well-being, a space that supports a broad range of activities and services, including educational programs, nutritional and cooking classes, community events and meals, a localized COVID vaccine site, and localized food distribution. That's what the community needs. And we know that because that is what community members have repeatedly stated to city staff and officials. The 7 Northview members on this project steering committee made that clear. They made it clear in 2018, made it clear in 2019, 2020. Here we are, 2021. We're here again. The data and research from the Flint Hills Wellness Coalition and Riley County Health Department on the lack of health equity in Northview make that clear. The repeated, explicit advocacy that NVR has brought to the city's attention from city commission meetings to letters and continuous email correspondence with city staff and officials to tonight's petition all make that clear. Despite this, the responses of city staff and officials has been to ignore and reject these stated evidence needs. Mayor Butler rejected the community's stated need for kitchen equipment, telling community members in an email explicitly about this issue that, quote, kitchen items were never a priority, and that the project's amenities exist to, quote, support possible sports tournaments. All city commissioners were included in that correspondence from November 2020, all of you. We've seen no substantive response. The Eisenhower Center is a taxpayer-subsidized project. It must address the needs of the community. Those needs must be defined by stakeholders, not the loudest voices with interest in the local sports tourism industry, and not by people that just don't get equity. Make this a relevant project. Install a functioning kitchen with the equipment paid for by the city, or as you've heard repeatedly, through city staff securing grant funding. Food insecurity is a core challenge for social services in our community, and it's actively harming Northview. If you go out and you talk to the folks, you can see that. A kitchen at the ECC is an equitable way for the city to begin addressing some of that harm. It's also just practical, guys. The city can continue to avoid addressing damage caused to community members by inequitable policies, 100% food desert status, and we're all going to continue paying more for social services that address only symptoms of those policies. Or the city can start addressing some of the root problems proactively. It can save itself and taxpayers' money in the long term. It can do the ethically right thing, and it can start supporting equitable projects that benefit all members of this community. I don't think in 20 seconds I can zing you like I want to zing you. And since the courtesy of my time isn't being expanded, I'll leave my comment to that.
Do we have any other speakers tonight?
Thomas Kerrigan, 705 Tuttle Street. I wasn't going to speak tonight. I just came to support Northview Rising. I've been with them for a while. And hearing some of the things and a little bit of the animosity there kind of prompted me to get up here and say what nobody really wants to say, but it needs said. I was on that steering committee, and these things that weren't priority, they were priorities, but this thing was structured in such a way that we were marginalized from the get-go. We were broken up into groups of 7 and each one of us was put in a different group, and majority ruled. We fought hard. We did get the kitchen plumbing and wiring put in as an afterthought, and we got a lot of resistance on that steering committee from that. We don't want that. We already decided that. Well, the architect, I believe, one of the guys, he said, hold on, let's listen. So we did get an in there, and we talked about that. And at this point, the elephant in the room is if this were a pet project of some of the haves in this town, it'd go right through. We don't blink at a $20 million project, but something like this, who needs it? Who's it benefit? What's it do? I'll go back to what you used to say about the ATA back in the day, because I've been coming here for a long time. You saw no need for it. You didn't want to spend money on it, but here you are now, years later, you know, you're trumping it. And so I say, find the money. Do what you got to do, work whatever you got to do, make that magic. I don't envy you your job. I wouldn't want to do it. I don't have the temperament for it, but it's got to be done. And equity and equality, totally different things. I think that we need to take a hard look at this, and that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comments on this topic? Now, this wasn't really an agenda item, so I don't think anybody was really prepared to get into the details on that, or the staff, or even the commissioners. I know we received some emails on it. I don't know, we haven't talked about CIP projects yet in the budget discussion. This probably fits under that umbrella, actually. Would be a citizen request for a CIP project, which would affect really a modification to the Eisenhower Rec Center. It was never designed as a community center, and that gets back into priorities, but maybe we could add that to future agenda when we talk about CIP, and then we can revisit this when we have some more details on hand. So on that note, that should probably conclude the meeting. So we're adjourned for tonight. Thank you.
I gotta pee. I was thinking about at 7:30 taking a break. No, that's right, there should be. Yeah, 'cause part of